Rain tapped against the stained glass of the Greengrass manor, a soft, insistent rhythm that echoed through the high-ceilinged halls like a whisper from the past. Harry stood beneath the great oak archway, water dripping from his cloak onto the marble floor, each drop a small echo in the silence. Before him, the family crest, once a bold emblem of silver serpent coiled around a thorned rose, emblazoned above the fireplace, had begun to fade, not cracked, not broken, but star-erased star, as if time itself had decided the Greengrasses no longer deserved to be remembered. "It started 3 nights ago," Daphne said from behind him, her voice measured, cool as the stone beneath their feet. "First the silver dulled, then the lines thinned. Now—" She gestured, and Harry saw it. The serpent's head was nearly gone, its eyes vanishing into pale stone. He stepped closer, wand drawn, tip glowing faintly with star-lumos star. The air around the crest shivered, cold and thin, like breath on a winter morning. He ran a hand along the edge of the frame. No heat, no residue of magic he recognized. Not dark magic, not in the usual sense. This was older, subtler. "It's not a spell," he murmured. "Not destruction. It's unmaking." Daphne's jaw tightened. "My great-grandmother said the crest was bound to our bloodline by magic older than Hogwarts. If it fades, the magic fades with it." He turned to her. "And you felt it?" She didn't answer at first. Then, a slow nod. "My Patronus failed last night, just wouldn't form. Like something inside me was hollowed out." Harry exhaled. This was the third family. First the Selwyns, then the McNeils, both stripped of magic overnight, their ancestral vaults sealed by blood wards that no longer recognized them. Now the Greengrasses. The ministry called it a curse. Harry called it a pattern. He pressed his palm flat against the stone where the crest used to be. A faint vibration hummed beneath his skin, low and ancient. A whisper curled at the edge of his hearing, words in a language he didn't know, but felt like roots stirring in dark soil. "Do you hear that?" he asked. Daphne tilted her head. "No, but I feel something, like a pull. In the west wing. There's a door we haven't opened in generations. Mother said it was sealed by Salazar's seal." Harry looked at her. "And you never wondered why?" "We were taught not to." He smirked. "That's never stopped me." And moved through the manor's shadowed halls, their footsteps muffled by thick rugs worn with age. Portraits of ancestors watched them pass, eyes following, some whispering in hushed tones. One old wizard with a long silver beard muttered, "The blood remembers, child, even when the name is forgotten." Daphne stiffened. "Ignore them. They've been dead too long to know anything useful." But Harry paused. What did he mean? "The blood remembers." She didn't answer. The west wing was colder. Dust draped the furniture like burial shrouds. At the end of the hall, a door stood half-hidden behind a tapestry of a forest under moonlight. The wood was blackened, not with rot, but with something else. Veins of dark magic pressed into the grain, forming a sigil, a serpent swallowing its tail, encircling a single rune. Harry touched it. The wood burned cold. "This is Parseltum," he said softly. "Not written. Carved. What was given may be reclaimed." Daphne's breath caught. "That's impossible. Only a Parselmouth could." "I am one," he said, meeting her eyes. "And someone left this here for someone like me." A silence stretched between them, taut as a wire. Then together they pushed the door open. Inside, the air taste of iron and hearth. Candles flared to life along the walls, revealing shelves of ancient tomes, a stone basin cracked down the middle, and a single rusted locket on a pedestal, its surface etched with the same crest that was vanishing from the hall. Harry stepped forward. The locket pulsed once, a heartbeat in metal, and from the shadows a voice, soft, feminine, trembling with centuries of silence, whispered, "You're late." Rain tapped a steady rhythm against the high, arched windows of the Ministry of Magic, each drop sounding like a whispered secret against the enchanted glass. The corridors below were hushed, the usual bustle of clerks and aurors subdued by the weight of recent events. Daphne Greengrass stood just inside the atrium, her boots clicking softly on the polished marble as she adjusted the high collar of her charcoal gray cloak. It was lined with silver thread, a Greengrass tradition, a mark of lineage. Now, that mark felt like a taunt. Her hands trembled, though she clenched them tightly at her sides. She had not wanted to come here. Pride had kept her away for days, even as Astoria grew paler, her spells flickering and dying wet guttering candles. But pride wouldn't stop the curse from spreading. It wouldn't restore the family's ancestral magic, or bring back the silver shimmer that once danced along their bloodline's veins, a mark now dull, almost gone. The wizard in lime-green robes passed by, eyeing her with hesitant recognition. "Miss Greengrass?" he asked, voice low. She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped toward the lifts, her reflection flickering in the bronze doors as they slid open. The runes etched into the wall pulsed faintly, responding to the ambient magic in the air, magic she could no longer feel in her own bones. The Department of Magical Law Enforcement was colder than she remembered. Files floated between desks, some sealed with wax stamped with the crests of fallen families. Names she knew: Greengrass, Rosier, Parkinson. Each one now whispered in the hush of loss. At the far end of the room, behind a desk littered with scrolls and a cracked wand box, sat Harry Potter. He looked up as she approached, green eyes, sharp beneath the scar that cut across his forehead. No fanfare, no false smiles, just quiet attention. "Daphne," he said. "Not Miss Greengrass, not an honorific." Their names spoken like they'd known each other longer than this war of silence and suspicion had allowed. "My sister can't cast a Patronus," she said, voice steady despite the ache in her chest. "Last week she couldn't apparate. Yesterday her wand wouldn't even light a candle. The healers say her magic is receding, like a tide pulling back from shore." Potter set down his quill. "And the family mark?" She pulled back her sleeve, revealing the inside of her wrist. Once, a delicate tracery of silver lines had pulsed there, a living sigil passed through generations. Now it was faint, like ink smudged by rain. "It's fading," she admitted. "The healers don't know why. But the others, those families on your list, they're all like us. Old blood, pure lines. And now, nothing." He stood, moving to a cabinet behind him. From it he withdrew a small obsidian mirror, its surface clouded. "We've been tracking the pattern. It's not random. It started with the Lestranges, then moved to the Knots. Now your family. Whatever this is, it's targeting something specific. Not just blood, but legacy, memory, magic tied to identity." Daphne swallowed. "So it's deliberate. Or inevitable," he said quietly. "There's a trace of ancient binding magic in the victims. Something older than the Ministry. Older than Hogwarts, maybe. And it's reacting to something. Something we haven't found yet." She looked at him then, really looked. Not the boy who lived, not the golden aurora, but a man who'd stared into darkness and kept walking. "Then help me find it." Potter met her gaze. "I've been waiting for someone from your circle to ask." A silence settled between them, fragile but charged. Outside, the rain fell harder, drumming against the aurora-warded dome above London. Somewhere beneath their feet, deep in the forgotten tunnels beneath Gringotts and the old catacombs, something ancient stirred, awakened perhaps by loss or by love long buried. Lang lashed against the tall, narrow windows of the minister's office, distorting the gaslit glow of Diagon Alley below into smears of gold and shadow. Harry stood with his back to the room, arms crossed, watching the storm warp the reflection of his own tired face. He hadn't slept in 3 nights. Not since the Greengrass matriarch had been found in her ancestral drawing room, pale as parchment, her family reigned dull and lifeless, the sigil of her bloodline scoured away as if it had never existed. "Otter," Kingsley Shacklebolt said, his voice low and measured. "Sit down." Harry didn't move. "You know I don't work well with partners, Minister, especially not with—" "Miss Greengrass is already here," Kingsley interrupted, nodding toward the door. It swung open without a knock. Daphne Greengrass stepped inside, her cloak dark with rain, her silver blonde hair pulled back so tightly it seemed to pull time itself taut across her face. She didn't look at Harry. She didn't look at anyone. Her gaze settled on the minister, cool and unreadable. "You asked for me," she said. Kingsley gestured to the chair beside Harry's. "Sit, Daphne. This concerns you more than anyone." She didn't move. "Then say it standing." He sighed. "Another family fell last night. The Selwyns. Both parents. Their magic, gone. The ward stones at their estate are dark. The Ministry's curse breakers found nothing. No residue, no spell traces, no dark mark. Just emptiness." Daphne's jaw tightened. "Like my mother. Like the others," Kingsley corrected gently. "And like the McNeils, the Yaxleys. 7 houses now, all ancient bloodlines, all tied to old magics, all stripped bare. Harry finally turned. And you think it's connected to Voldemort? Kingsley finished. We don't know, but we do know that someone, or something, is targeting the roots of our world. And we need answers. Daphne's voice was ice. And you think his star can find them? Harry bristled. I've dealt with curses before. Greengrass, dark artifacts, hidden magic, things your family's history books probably left out. She turned to him then, her pale eyes sharp. And I suppose your heroic instincts are enough to unravel centuries of blood magic. Enough, Kingsley said sharply. Both of you. You're not here to trade insults. You're here because you're the only ones who can see both sides of this. Harry, you face the darkest corners of our world. You understand sacrifice, legacy, and what happens when power is corrupted. Daphne, you come from one of the oldest lines. You know the rituals, the wards, the blood oaths that bind families like yours. You feel the absence when a mark is erased. Daphne's fingers brushed the base of her throat, where a faint scar marred her skin, the place where her lineage mark had once burned. You're pairing the boy who lived with the Ice Queen of Slytherin, she said bitterly. How poetic. It's practical, Kingsley said. And it's not a request. You're assigned. Together, you'll have full access to the Department of Mysteries, the restricted section, and reluctantly, the Black Archives. But you report to me, and you work Star together. Star. Harry exhaled through his nose. And if we refuse, then another family dies, Kingsley said. And the next one might be yours, Potter, or hers. This curse doesn't care about allegiances. It only cares about blood. Silence settled, thick and heavy, broken only by the drumming rain. Daphne finally moved, stepping forward and taking the seat farthest from Harry. She didn't look at him. When do we start? Now, Kingsley said. There's a ledger, recovered from the ruins beneath Gringotts. It mentions a hidden chamber beneath the London Undercroft. Something called Star, the Vault of Echo's Star. It's sealed with founder-level wards. No one's opened it in over 3 centuries. Harry frowned. And we're supposed to just break in? No, Daphne said quietly. We're supposed to remember how. The wards would only yield to blood and sacrifice. My family, we were once entrusted with the key. Harry looked at her, really looked. For the first time he saw not the cold, pure-blood heiress, but someone hollowed out by loss, carrying grief like a second skin. And you're willing to try? He asked. She met his gaze. I don't have a choice, do I? The fire in the hearth of the Greengrass library crackled low, casting long, flickering shadows across the vaulted ceiling. Dust motes swirled in the dim light like tiny stars caught in a slow dance. Daphne knelt beside a stone-lined alcove, her fingers brushing over the cold iron of an ancient chest, its surface etched with runes that pulsed faintly at her touch. She exhaled, a soft breath that stirred the silence. This was my grandmother's, she said, not looking up. She said it only opens for blood and memory. Harry stood a few paces behind, arms folded, his scar a dull throb beneath his fringe. He'd seen enough cursed objects to know when something was more than old. It was waiting. Daphne drew a silver dagger from the folds of her robe, pressed it to her palm, and let a single drop of blood fall into the wok. The runes flared green, then dimmed. A click echoed through the room. The chest groaned as it opened, revealing brittle scrolls, a tarnished locket, and a journal bound in serpent-scale leather. That's not normal, Harry said. No, Daphne replied, lifting the journal with careful hands. It's Slytherin script, older than Hogwarts. She unfurled one of the scrolls, its edges crumbling like dried leaves. The ink had faded to a ghostly blue, but the symbols still held power. Harry could feel it humming in the air, a low resonance beneath his skin. It speaks of a rite, Daphne whispered. The severing, not just of magic, but of legacy, a punishment for betrayal among the bloodlines. Harry stepped closer. Betrayal? What kind? She traced a line with her finger. It says, when kin turn upon kin, and the sacred vow is broken, the mark shall fade, the magic wither, and the name be unmade. She paused. It sounds like a prophecy, or a warning. And your family, you think they were involved? Daphne's jaw tightened. My ancestors were loyal to Slytherin, but not blindly. There's a story, never spoken aloud, that one Greengrass refused to follow him when he left Hogwarts. Called his ways extreme. They say Salazar cursed the traitor's line, but it was never confirmed. Until now. Harry stared at the journal. So this curse, it's not new. It's an old spell, airy but still active. Dormant, she corrected, waiting for a trigger. And someone found it. A cold draft seeped through the room, though the windows were sealed. The fire sputtered. For a moment, the shadows along the wall seemed to deepen, to shift. Harry drew his wand. "Do you feel that?" he asked. Daphne nodded, her voice low. "It's not just magic, it's memory. The house remembers." The journal trembled in her hands. Words began to bleed across the page, fresh ink rising from old parchment, as if the past were writing itself anew. Harry leaned in. Star. The blood oath was broken, not by one, but by many. The Founder's pact frayed at the edges. Salazar sought purity, yes, but also protection. From what lay beneath Star, Harry frowned. Beneath what? Daphne turned the page with reverence. There's a map here, of tunnels, under London, older than the Underground, older than the Ministry. Under Hogwarts? No, she said, eyes widening. Under the city. And this symbol, she pointed to a sigil in the corner. A serpent coiled around a key. This was in my father's private study. He called it the seal of the forgotten vault. Harry's breath caught. Voldemort used symbols like this. In the Department of Mysteries. She looked at him then, really looked. Her blue eyes sharp, searching. You think he knew about this? I think, Harry said slowly. He was looking for something he didn't understand. And maybe he woke it up. The fire went out. The room plunged into darkness. From the depths of the chest, the locket began to hum, a low, mournful tone that vibrated in their bones. Daphne clutched the journal to her chest. We need to go beneath the city, she said, before the next bloodline falls. Harry nodded, wand alight. Then we start digging. The wind howled through the skeletal remains of what had once been the Pembroke estate, a sprawling manor carved from grey stone and pride, now reduced to jagged walls and ash. Harry pulled his cloak tighter, the cold not just from the weather but from the air itself, thick with lingering magic, sour and spent. Daphne stood a few paces ahead, her back straight, her face unreadable, though Harry knew the truth. This was her cousin's home, the first to fall. They said it burned without fire, she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. One moment, the Pembroke sigil glowed on the gates. The next, silence, then the screams. Harry stepped carefully over a cracked slab of marble that had once been part of the grand entrance. Beneath his feet, the earth was blackened, not with soot, but with something darker, like scorched magic itself. He crouched, running his fingers along the ground. The residue hummed faintly, a dissonant vibration against his skin. It's not just a curse, he said. It's a devouring. Like something sucked the magic out and left the shell. Daphne didn't answer. She was staring at the remnants of the family crest etched into a broken pillar. The serpentine pea and the twin ravens, symbols of the Pembroke line, were half melted, their edges blurred as if erased by invisible fingers. She reached out, hesitated, then traced the outline with her wand. A whisper slithered from the stone. Star, Alara, Star, Harry, froze. The voice was faint, broken, but unmistakably female. Daphne snatched her hand back. That's my cousin, she breathed. Alara Pembroke. Another whisper, layered now, overlapping. Star, Marcus, Lysandra, Thaddeus, Star. The names rose like smoke from the ruins, mournful and hollow. Harry felt them brush against his ears, not with sound, but with memory. The air shimmered, and for a heartbeat he saw them, figures in long robes standing in the great hall that no longer existed, their faces pale, their eyes wide with terror as something unseen drained them from within. He staggered back. It's still happening, the curse, it's stuck in time here. Daphne's jaw tightened. It's not just a place, it's a wound. They moved deeper into the ruin, the whispers growing louder, more insistent. Harry's scar prickled, not with pain but with recognition. This magic, It wasn't like Voldemort's, it was older, colder, but there was a thread, faint and corroded, that reminded him of the Horcruxes, of soul magic twisted beyond repair. In the center of what had been the courtyard, the circle was scorched into the earth, 12 feet across, its edges perfectly smooth. Harry knelt again, pressing his palm flat. The ground pulsed once, weakly, like a dying heart. "This is where it began," he said. "The curse didn't just strike, it was called." Summoned. Daphne stepped into the circle. "Why here?" The Pembrokes weren't known for dark magic. They were traditional, yes, but not this. Harry looked up at her. Maybe they didn't summon it. Maybe they were trying to stop it. A gust of wind tore through the ruins, and the whispers rose into a chorus. Names, dozens of them, some familiar, some lost to time. Then, one voice cut through the rest, clear and sharp as glass. "Sar Salazar, Star." They both turned. From the fractured remains of the west wing, a single stone remained intact, a foundation marker, covered in roads. Harry didn't recognize. Daphne approached it slowly, brushing away decades of grime. Her breath caught. "Izard Pembroke marks," she said. "They're older, predating the family by centuries." Harry joined her. Beneath the dirt, the rooms shimmered faintly, pulsing in time with the whispers. One symbol stood out, a serpent coiled around a key, half buried in ash. "It's a founder's sigil," he whispered. "But not one they ever taught us about." Daphne traced the serpent with her fingertips. This land wasn't always the Pembroke estate. Before them, it belonged to the Ashbournes, a family erased from records after the Founders' era. Rumor said they tried to bind the bloodlines, to control the magic itself. Harry looked back at the scorched circle, and someone's trying to finish what they started. The wind died, the whispers faded, but the stone beneath their feet still trembled, like a warning. The air in the St. Mungo's private ward hung thick with the scent of dried belladonna and old parchment, a sterile tang beneath it all that spoke of magic pushed to its limits. Harry stood beside the bed, hands clenched at his sides, watching the slow rise and fall of Daphne Greengrass's chest. Her skin was pale as chalk, her usually sharp blue eyes closed, lashes dark against her cheeks. A faint silver thread pulsed beneath her collarbone, barely visible, like a heartbeat trapped beneath glass. "She's stable," said Healer Malkin, her voice low, measured. She adjusted the velvet cuff around Daphne's wrist, its runes faintly glowing, but the magic isn't just dormant, it's severed, as if something reached into her blood and tore out the root. Harry swallowed. "Like the others?" "Exactly like the others." Malkin pulled back the sleeve of Daphne's robe, revealing a mark on her inner forearm, pale, shimmering, like frost on stone. It hadn't been there yesterday. "This only appears under moonlight, or when exposed to trace Founder's residue. We've tested it on 5 families now. All show the same sigil." Harry leaned closer. The symbol was intricate, 3 interlocking spirals bound by a broken circle, like a seal that had cracked from within. "Is it a curse mark?" "No," Malkin said, almost reverently. "It's a signature, a brand of lineage magic being overwritten. Think of it like a family crest, not carved into stone, but into blood. When the curse strikes, it doesn't just drain their power, it erases their ancestral signature. Their magic no longer remembers who it belongs to." Harry frowned. "Erases. But blood magic can't be undone. Not like this." "Normally no, but this isn't normal blood magic. It's antediluvian, older than Hogwarts, older than the Ministry. I've seen fragments of it in the restricted vaults, symbols etched into Founder-era wards. This," she pointed to the sigil, "is a reversal glyph. It doesn't destroy magic. It recalls it, like a spell unwinding." "To where?" Malkin hesitated. "To its source. But that's the problem, Mr. Potter. The source should be the family line. Yet when we trace the magic, it doesn't go back to ancestors. It goes downward, into the earth, beneath London." Harry's pulse quickened. "Beneath? There's a nexus, an old one. We've known about it for centuries. Rumors of a chamber beneath the city where the ley lines converge. But no one's ever found it. And no one's ever seen this glyph, outside of prophecy texts, until now." A cold weight settled in Harry's gut. He looked back at Daphne, her fingers twitched, and for a moment, the silver thread beneath her skin flared, then dimmed again, like a dying star. "She woke earlier," Malkin said softly. Only for a few seconds. She whispered something. I didn't understand it at first. That I checked the archives. It's in Old High Latin. Sanguis redimat quod furatum est. Blood will redeem what was stolen. Harry exhaled slowly. She remembers. She remembers the pain, not the cause, but the curse. It leaves echoes. In dreams. In blood. The Greengrass line is one of the oldest in the Wisengomo. If they're being targeted, it's not random. This is deliberate. Someone or something is unraveling the foundation of pure blood magic, one house at a time. And Daphne? She's the first to survive the initial strike. The others, they faded within hours. She lasted days. That means something. Either her magic is stronger, or the curse hesitated. Harry reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from Daphne's forehead. Her skin was cool. If it's hesitating, he said, then we have time. For now, Melkin said. But the sigil is spreading. We found traces in the water beneath Diagon Alley, in the mortar of ancient wards. Someone is using the city itself as a conduit. And if the next target is who I think it is, Harry turned. Who? The Potters. Rain lashed against the high windows of the Ministry's Department of Magical Law Enforcement, distorting the lamplight into trembling streaks across the stone floor. Harry stood with his back to the fire, arms crossed, watching the steam rise from his damp robes. Across the room, Hermione Granger sat at her desk, parchment scattered like fallen leaves, ink smudged at the corners from hurried notes. It's not just a curse, she said, voice low but certain. It's a ward, a very old one, and it's keyed to blood. Harry turned. You're saying someone built a trap into the bloodlines themselves. Hermione nodded, pushing a frayed scroll toward him. Look at the pattern. The Greengrasses, the Knots, the Rosiers. They're all descended from families who supported Salazar Slytherin. Not just politically, genetically, through marriage, through lineage. But it's not about allegiance anymore. It's about inheritance magic. The kind that binds magic to blood, like the Gauntring's curse, but on a larger scale. Daphne stood near the door, silent until now. My grandmother once told me, our family crest wasn't just symbolism. The serpent coiled around the ancient oak. It was a ward sigil. She said it protected the bloodline from betrayal. I thought it was just pure blood nonsense. Hermione met her gaze. It wasn't nonsense. It was a fail-safe. But someone inverted it. Harry stepped forward, frowning. How? And why now? These families have been around for centuries. Because the trigger was dormant, Hermione said. Until something changed. Maybe a ritual. Maybe a death. Or an awakening. She hesitated. Harry, there's something else. I found references in the restricted archives. Fragments, really, to a founder-level enchantment meant to punish those who defiled the blood. It was said to erase magical inheritance from those who used lineage as weapon. Daphne's voice was tight. We didn't do that. Our families may have believed in blood purity, but I'm not judging, Hermione interrupted gently. I'm saying the magic doesn't care about intent. It reacts to lineage, to the magical imprints passed down, and if Voldemort's experiments tampered with those imprints. Harry felt a cold weight settle in his chest. He used their blood, for the resurrection, for Horcruxes. He twisted it. Daphne's hands clenched. My cousin. She died 3 months ago. Her magic just withered. They said it was the curse, but if Voldemort touched our bloodline, it could have left a scar in the magic, Hermione finished. A flaw. And now something is exploiting it, like a spell lying in wait, finally finding its key. Silence fell, broken only by the crackle of the fire. Then Daphne said, You're saying the curse isn't an attack, it's a punishment. For what? Harry asked. For surviving? She whispered. For letting our blood be used. For not dying with the rest of them. Hermione shook her head. No, not for that. For forgetting. Enchantment. It wasn't just about blood. It was about memory. About honoring the dead. The old families, they kept records, rituals, names. But after the war, so much was buried, ignored, burned. What if the magic remembers? What if it sees silence as betrayal? Harry stared into the flames. He thought of the gaunt shack, of the locket Horcrux, of the way Voldemort had hollowed out his own ancestry. He thought of Daphne's quiet grief, the way she still wore her mother's heirloom bracelet, tarnished but unbroken. This isn't just about stopping a curse, he said slowly. It's about making amends. Daphne looked at him, her eyes sharp with something like fear and hope. Hermione nodded. And if we don't, the magic will keep spreading. Not just to purebloods, to anyone whose magic is tied to those lines, which means half-bloods, Harry finished. Muggle-borns with adopted lineages. Healers using ancestral charms. Even Hogwarts itself. It's built on blood magic. The fire dimmed. Outside, thunder rolled like a warning. We need to go back, Daphne said, to the beginning, to the oldest vault, the one beneath the London crypts. If the ward was planted there, that's where it can be undone. Harry met her gaze. No hesitation, no doubt. Then we go together. The air in the Department of Mysteries Restricted Archives was thick with the scent of aged parchment and damp stone, a cold stillness that clung to the back of the throat. Rows of towering black wood shelves stretched into shadow, their spines etched with names long forgotten. Harry ran his fingers along a cracked leather binding, the title worn away by time. Dust swirled in the dim blue glow of the enchanted lantern Daphne held aloft, casting jagged shadows across her pale features. I still don't see why we're wasting time here, she murmured, voice low, as if the silence itself might eavesdrop. The Ministry's records are incomplete at best, especially for families like mine. Because the pattern doesn't make sense otherwise, Harry replied, pulling a brittle volume from the shelf. The Greengrasses, the Knots, the Yaxleys, every one of them traces back to the same period, early 14th century. Something happened then. Something they didn't want recorded. Daphne exhaled sharply, her breath misting in the chill. Or something they couldn't remember. Obliviations on a generational scale aren't unheard of among the old houses. My grandmother once said our family crest used to be different, that it changed after a tragedy. Harry glanced at her, noting hesitation in her tone. What kind of tragedy? She shook her head. No one talks about it, just whispers. A lost heir, a betrayal, a curse that wasn't ours to begin with. He opened the book, careful not to crack the spine. The pages crackled like dry leaves. Faded ink sketched a sprawling family tree. House Selwyn, but half the names were crossed out in thick, deliberate strokes. At the base of the page a note, barely legible, Star Heir of Shadows, bound by blood and oath, sealed beneath the city's heart. Star Harry's pulse quickened. Did you see that? Daphne stepped closer, the lantern light trembling slightly in her grip. Heir of Shadows? That's not in any of the standard genealogies, not even in the Forbidden Scrolls. No, Harry said slowly, but it's mentioned in one of Voldemort's journals. I found a reference while going through the Black Library. He was obsessed with bloodlines, especially ones that resisted possession, ones that carried something older. She looked at him then, really looked at him, her ice-blue eyes narrowing. You think this is connected to him? I think he found something, Harry said, and whatever it was, he didn't create it. He just awakened it. A soft rustle echoed from deeper in the archives, like pages turning in an empty aisle. They both stilled. That wasn't us, Daphne whispered. Harry closed the book gently and set it aside. We need to find the original registry, the one from the Founder's era. If this Heir of Shadows predates the pureblood feuds, it might be tied to something older, something Hogwarts itself buried. And is it guarded? She asked. Then we're already being watched. They moved deeper into the maze of shelves, the light growing thinner. The silence pressed in, broken only by their footsteps and the occasional creak of ancient wood. Finally, Harry stopped before a small iron-bound cabinet, its lock shaped like a serpent swallowing its tail. This is it, he said. The Founder's Ledger. Supposedly contains the oaths and lineages recognized by the original four. Daphne reached into her robes and withdrew a slender silver key. My mother gave me this, said I'd know when to use it. Harry raised an eyebrow. She said, when the shadows remember their name. He nodded slowly. She inserted the key. It turned with a soft click. Inside lay a single crumbling page, folded as if hastily hidden. Harry unfolded it with care. The ink was dark, almost fresh-looking, despite its age. At the center, a seal, a phoenix entwined with a basilisk, and beneath it, a name written in a hand so familiar, it stole his breath. Star Sophia Slytherin, Heir of Shadows, Keeper of the Unbroken Oath. Star Daphne's hand tightened on the lantern. Slytherin had a daughter? Not in any history book, Harry said. But Voldemort never had children. At least, not that we know of. Unless, she whispered, the heir wasn't through blood, but through sacrifice. Another rustle. Closer this time. And then, from the parchment, a whisper. Not in their ears, but in their minds. Star, you are found at last. Star. Rain tapped a slow, uneven rhythm against the cracked window panes of the Greengrass Ancestral Library, each drop sounding like a whispered secret too long buried. The air was thick with dust and the faint sour tang of decayed parchment. Harry ran his fingers along a row of ancient spellbooks, their spines cracked like dried riverbeds, the titles obscured by time. Daphne stood near the hearth, her back straight, her face unreadable, as she studied the blackened portrait of her great-aunt Seraphina, the first to fall. She was powerful, Daphne said, voice low, not just in bloodline but in spellcraft. She studied under a branch of the old rune's masters. And then, one morning, nothing, no warning, no pain, just empty. Harry turned. Empty how? No magic. Her eyes flickered to the portrait's blank face, the once living expression now frozen, hollow, like someone had scooped it out. And the Greengrass mark, the silver vine that appears on the inner wrist at maturity, it vanished, as if she'd never been born to the line. He stepped closer, noting the way her fingers trembled slightly before she clenched them into a fist. Do we know when it started? 3 weeks before she died. That's when the diary begins. She pulled a small leather-bound book from beneath her cloak. The cover was unmarked, the edges singed. She hesitated before handing it over. It was hidden behind the false panel in her chambers. Only blood can open it. I had to cut my palm to get it. Harry's throat tightened. He took it carefully, the leather cold and strangely damp. The moment his fingers touched it, the cover shimmered, faint silver script blooming across the surface. He whispered the activation charm, and the lock clicked open with a sigh. He whispered the activation notes, observations about lunar alignments. But then halfway through the handwriting changed, looser, softer. Emotion bled into the ink. Star, I did not think I could feel this way again. He found me in the catacombs beneath St. Mungo's. Not lost, but seeking. He called me by name, though I'd never seen his face. Said the shadows whispered it to him. Dangerous, yes. But when he smiles, the dark parts of me quiet. Star, Harry exhaled slowly. She was in love. Daphne crossed her arms. With a man who dealt in forbidden arts. Shadow binding. It's not just dark magic. It's older. Older than Hogwarts. They say it was banned by Salazar himself. Harry flipped forward. The entries grew more urgent. Star, they call him a ghost. A revenant. But he's real. He remembers things. Things no one should know. He speaks of a vault beneath the city, where the founders sealed something away. Not a weapon, a promise. And he says I'm tied to it. By blood, by choice. Star, Daphne's breath caught. That's impossible. The Greengrasses have no ties to the founders. Not by name, Harry said, eyes narrowing. But by bloodline? Maybe. What if your family was founded by someone who left or was cast out? She didn't answer. Her gaze was fixed on the next page. Star, he kissed me tonight beneath the old oak in the garden. His lips were cold, but his heart, I felt it beat once, just once. He says love is the only light that can wake the sleeping magic. But it must be true. Not duty, not alliance. Love that chooses ruin over silence. Star. Then a shift. Star. He's gone. Took my magic with him. Not stolen, but borrowed, he said. To open the door. He swore he'd return it. Swore he'd return to me. But the mark on my wrist is fading. I can't feel the pulse in my wand. I think he needed more than my love. He needed my name. My blood, my end, Star. The final entry was smeared, as if written in haste, or tears. Star, if you are reading this, then I am gone. And he did not come back. But listen, the curse is not a punishment. It's a key, and it will wake again. It feeds on lineage, yes, but only those who once gave something freely. Love, magic, life. The shadow remembers, and it's hungry. Harry closed the diary. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the distant creak of the manor settling. Daphne's voice was barely a whisper. She didn't die from the curse. He looked at her. She gave her magic willingly, for love. A pause, and now it's coming for us. The air in the ministry atrium tasted stale, thick with whispers and the acrid tang of fear. Harry stepped through the golden gates, his boots echoing against the marble, but the sound was swallowed by the hush that followed him. Heads turned, fingers twitched toward wands. Even the enchanted ceiling, usually a soft mimicry of the London sky, seemed strained, its clouds low and bruised. He didn't need to hear their words to know what they were saying. Star Potter, the chosen one, but not chosen for this. Star, a scroll sealed with black wax stamped with the Knott family crest, had arrived at dawn. Another line extinguished. Orion Knott, 17 and barely out of Hogwarts, found lifeless in his bed, skin pale as parchment, the serpent and dagger birthmark on his inner wrist, proof of ancient lineage, gone as if it had never been. No blood, no struggle, just emptiness. Harry clenched his jaw and kept walking, still playing hero Potter. A smooth voice cut through the silence. Draco Malfoy stood near the lifts, impeccably dressed, one hand resting on the hilt of the ceremonial dagger at his belt. His eyes were shadowed, but his smirk was sharp. But just here to gawk at the fallout. "This isn't a game, Malfoy," Harry said, stopping a few paces away. "It's happening to your family, too." Draco's smile faltered. "My father is unharmed. The Malfoy name remains. For now." Harry met his gaze. "How long before it's you?" A flicker of something, fear maybe, passed behind Draco's eyes. Then it vanished. "At least we have a name. Unlike the Greengrasses, or the Selwyns. No records, no trace. Poof." He snapped his fingers. "Tell me, Potter, how does it feel, knowing you can't save them? Not even your partner." Harry tensed. "Daphne's doing more than you ever have." "Partner?" Draco sneered. "You mean the Ministry's pet project? The last Greengrass clinging to relevance by your coattails. Tell me, does she whisper family secrets in your ear at night? Or is it just business?" Harry stepped forward, voice low. "You don't know anything about her. I know her family's blood is thin. I know they've been hiding debts for decades. And I know that when a curse eats lineage, it starts with the weakest lines." Draco tilted his head. "Coincidence she's still standing?" Before Harry could respond, a commotion erupted near the Wizengamot chamber. Shouting. A wand flared with red light. A tall wizard in deep green robes, Rodolphus Selwyn, had cornered an elderly man against the wall, his wand pressed to the man's throat. "You sold the ritual components," Selwyn snarled. "I know you did. To the Lestranges. To Star him Star." The man, Aberforth Crouch, distant cousin to the late Barty, trembled. "I dealt in antiques, Selwyn, not curses. I wouldn't curse and dabbled in the dark arts. Your grandfather bowed to the Dark Lord. You think your blood is clean. Enough." Harry strode forward, wand drawn. "Lower your wand, Selwyn." Selwyn turned, eyes wild. "Stay out of this, Potter. This is pure blood business." "And the Ministry is where business gets handled," a cool voice said. Daphne Greengrass stepped from the shadow of a pillar. She wore black robes trimmed in silver, her blonde hair pinned tightly, her face unreadable. But Harry saw the faint tremor in her fingers, the tightness around her eyes. "You accuse others," she said, walking toward Selwyn, "while your own vaults reek of forbidden tomes. I've seen the manifests, Rodolphus. You imported cursive relics from Albania last winter. Samples of basilisk venom, flesh-eating moss from Azkaban's lower tunnels." Selwyn's face twisted. "You dare." "I dare because my mother's mark faded yesterday," Daphne said, voice quiet but cutting through the atrium like glass. "And I will not let fear turn us into beasts tearing at each other's throats while the real enemy watches." Silence fell. Even Draco looked stunned. Daphne turned to Harry. "We're wasting time. The records in the Department of Mysteries, they're not just old. They're star-changing star. I found a ledger this morning. The Pruitt lineage was listed as intact. Now it's marked Star Erase Star. As if it never existed." Harry nodded, the weight of it settling between his shoulders. "He said them. Then we denied. Then he meted the settling. Between his shoulders. Then we go deeper." She met his gaze. before there's nothing left to save. Rain lashed against the windows of Harry's flat above Diagon Alley, blurring the glow of street lamps into smears of gold. He stood by the sill, tea gone cold in his hand, watching the distorted reflections of passing witches under enchanted umbrellas. The silence of the room was thick, broken only by the occasional crackle of the dying fire. It had been 3 days since Daphne had left for Greengrass Manor under ministry guard. 3 days since the last cursed mark appeared, this time on her younger cousin, a boy of 10, whose magic had vanished like breath on glass. A sharp tap at the window made him turn. Not an owl, too heavy, too deliberate. A second later, the sound came again, insistent. Harry set the cup down and drew his wand. Revelio. The words shimmered, then flared crimson. Not manistry, not auror, but keyed to old blood. Malfoy lineage, if the twist of silver in a magic was any indication. He unlocked the window. The wind tore it open, drenching the sill. Draco Malfoy clung to the ledge, his pale hair plastered to his forehead, his cloak soaked through. He hauled himself inside with a grunt, stumbling onto the rug. "You've got wards like a paranoid hermit," he muttered, shivering. "What are you doing here?" Harry asked, not lowering his wand. Draco straightened, brushing water from his sleeves. His face was drawn, shadows under his eyes. "I wouldn't be here at all if it weren't important. But they're coming for the Greengrasses, Potter. Not by accident, not by curse, by name." A chill settled in Harry's gut. "Explain." Draco met his gaze, and for the first time, Harry saw something unfamiliar in those gray eyes. Fear, yes, but also guilt. "My father kept journals, not the kind the ministry seized. The real ones. Hidden beneath the wine cellar, sealed with my mother's magic. I didn't read them until after the funeral." He reached into his coat and pulled out a slim, leather-bound book, its edges cracked with age. He wrote about the war, about things he didn't want remembered, about the Greengrasses. Harry didn't move. Daphne's family stayed neutral. "Neutral?" Draco let out a hollow laugh. "You think neutrality buys safety in times like that? My father called them star cowards, Star, but he also called them star traitors, Star. But he also called them star traitors, Star. Astoria, Daphne's sister, she helped a group of Muggleborns escape through the Wiltshire tunnels in '97. Daphne covered for her. They never found proof, but Lucius believed it." Harry exhaled slowly. "And now someone's settling old scores?" "Not just scores," Draco said, voice low. "Look at the pattern. The curse doesn't strike randomly. It erases lineage marks, the magical sigils only pure-blood heirs carry. But it only affects those who survived the war without consequence. The ones who walked away clean." "Daphne wasn't clean," Harry said quietly. "She fought, quietly, but she did, and someone knows what she did," Draco said. "Someone who remembers what the Greengrasses hid. Someone who thinks they weren't punished enough." Harry turned to the fireplace, reigniting the flames with a flick of his wand. The warmth did little to ease the cold in his chest. "You're saying this is personal, not some ancient curse, revenge from someone who lived through the war." Draco nodded. "And it's not over. The journal mentions a name, one Lucius feared even after the Dark Lord fell. Star Seraphine Vale. Star. She was a seer, part of an old coven purged in the 1930s for practicing forbidden blood magic. Her line was supposed to be extinct, but if she had descendants, and if they knew what the Greengrasses did, they'd have reason to make them pay." "Blood for blood," Harry murmured. "Exactly. And Daphne's next. The marks are getting closer. Her mother, her cousin. The curse is working its way to the heir." Harry turned, firelight catching the hard set of his jaw. "Where's Daphne now?" "Greengrass Manor. But the wards there are old, weakened. If this veiled descendant knows the bloodlines, they can slip through like smoke." Harry grabbed his cloak. "Then we're going to stop them." Draco hesitated. "I'm not doing this for you, Potter, or even for Daphne. I'm doing it because if this spreads, if they start targeting families like mine, no one will be safe." Harry looked at him, really looked. Not the boy he'd hated, not the man who'd bowed to power, but someone who'd finally learned the cost of silence. "Then let's go," he said, "before history finishes what it started." The air beneath Diagon Alley tasted of damp stone and old iron, thick with the silence of centuries. Harry's wand trembled slightly in his grip, its tip casting a narrow beam of blue-white light that sliced through the darkness ahead. Cobwebs clung to the crumbling arches overhead, glistening faintly like silver thread in the dim glow. Daphne walked just ahead of him, her posture rigid, every sense alert. Her breath came in measured puffs, barely audible, but Harry heard them all the same. "This wasn't in any Greengrass ledger," she murmured, her fingers brushing the wall as she passed. "And yet, I recognize the sigil." She paused, turning to a shallow carving etched into the stone. A spiral within a triangle, its lines worn but unmistakable. Its founder's script, not Latin, not even Parseltongue. It's older. Harry stepped closer, lowering his wand. The rune shimmered faintly under the light, as if stirred by their presence. "What does it say?" Daphne hesitated. "It warns of guardians. Those who pass must offer blood and intent. Not just any blood, lineage blood. Heir to heir." She glanced at him, her pale eyes reflecting the wanlight like frost. "My family's mark is fading. You've seen it. The curse eats our magic like rot in the roots. If this trap still works, it might not recognize me." Harry exhaled slowly. "Then we give it both. Together." She looked at him, startled. "You don't even know what you're offering." "No," he said, "but I know what it means to carry a name that's supposed to mean something. I know what it's like when the world expects you to live up to ghosts." He reached into his coat and pulled out the diary, the one they'd found hidden in the ruins of Malfoy Manor, its pages brittle with age, written in a hand that matched Helga Hufflepuff's known scripts. This wasn't meant to be found, not by us, not yet. But someone wanted the truth buried with the bones. Daphne took the diary, her fingers brushing his for a brief moment. A spark, not magic, something else, passed between them. She looked away quickly. They stepped forward in unison. The floor beneath them groaned, ancient stone shifting with a low grinding hum. The spiral rood flared crimson, then dimmed. A seam appeared in the wall, widening inch by inch, revealing a narrow passage slick with moss and shadow. The deeper they went, the colder it became. Their breath fogged in the air. Strange carvings lined the walls, figures with hollow eyes, hands clasped over hearts split open, mouths frozen in silent cries. Harry's scar prickled, a dull throb that came and went like a distant drumbeat. "Do you feel that?" Daphne whispered. "Like something's watching," Harry answered. Then the ground trembled. A low chant rose from the darkness ahead. No voice, no source. Just sound woven into the stone itself. Words in a dead tongue. Harry's wand light flickered. Daphne drew her own, its glow a soft gold, steady and worn. "Stay close," she said, and for the first time, it wasn't an order. It was a plea. The passage opened into a chamber vast and vaulted, its ceiling lost in shadow. In the center stood a dais of black basalt, etched with interlocking runes. Slytherin, Ravenclaw, even traces of Gryffindor. But fused beneath them, like roots strangling a tree, were the jagged serpentine marks of Horcrux magic. Harry's breath caught. He was here. Daphne stepped forward, her boots echoing. Not just him, others. "Look." She pointed to the wall, where names were carved. Greengrass, Knott, Lestrange, and beside them, in smaller script, Star Forgiven. Forgotten, Bound, Star. "What does it mean?" Harry asked. Daphne touched her family name, her voice barely a whisper. "It means we weren't just cursed, we were chosen. And whatever happened down here, it wasn't just about power, it was about penance." Dandelight flickered against the stone walls of the hidden archive beneath the Ministry's Department of Mysteries, casting long, wavering shadows that danced like restless spirits. Dust hung thick in the air, stirred only by the slow turn of Daphne Greengrass's fingers as she traced the edges of an ancient weathered parchment. Her breath came shallow, measured each exhalation, a careful effort not to disturb the fragile ink that had lain undisturbed for centuries. Harry crouched beside her, his glasses smudged from the grime of their descent. He watched the curve of her brow, the way her silver blue eyes narrowed with concentration. She hadn't spoken in nearly 20 minutes, not since they'd found the sigil carved into the base of a forgotten founder's column deep within the ruins beneath Diagon Alley. "It's not just a symbol," she murmured at last, voice barely above a whisper. "It's a binding mark, a signature." Harry leaned closer. "The serpent around the flame. That's what we saw on the Greengrass crest when the curse hit, isn't it?" Daphne nodded. "And on the bones, the faucets, the Selwyns, all of them. But no one knew what it meant. Most thought it was just a side effect. Magic unraveling. But this, she tapped the parchment with a pale fingertip. This is intentional, deliberate. The sigil glowed faintly under the candlelight, as if stirred by recognition. The serpent coiled tightly around the flame, its jaws open, not in attack, but in embrace. The flame did not consume it. Instead it pulsed, as though alive, feeding the serpent, feeding the stone, feeding something older than memory. Salazar's lineage, Daphne said softly. This mark. It's tied to blood magic of the oldest kind. Not just pure blood ideology, real blood magic. The kind that binds soul to legacy. Harry frowned. You're saying Salazar Slytherin created this? No, she said sharply. Then softer. No, not Salazar. But someone who believed they carried his will. Someone who thought they were correcting a betrayal. She turned the parchment, revealing a series of runes along the margin. These aren't Latin, not even close. This is Old Parseltongue, pre-Roman. I've only seen fragments before. But this... She exhaled. It speaks of a vow. A vow broken, a fire stolen, and a serpent left to die in the dark. Harry felt a chill crawl up his spine. Voldemort? Partly, Daphne replied. But deeper, older. The magic Voldemort used, it wasn't all his. He scoured the catacombs beneath Hogwarts, the sealed vaults of Slytherin's heirs. He took what he could, but he didn't understand it. He twisted it. And in doing so, he awakened something. She looked at him then, her eyes clear and haunted. The curse isn't just draining magic, Harry, it's reclaiming it. Every drop of inherited power from the old lines. It's being drawn back to its source, to this mark. And the source is a ritual, she whispered. One meant to restore what was lost, but corrupted. The serpent isn't devouring the flame, it's feeding on it. And as long as the sigil exists, as long as the chain of heirs continues, it will keep taking. Harry stared at the carving. So stopping it isn't just about breaking a curse, it's about confronting whatever made it. Daphne nodded. And the ritual requires a sacrifice, not just magic. Blood, willing blood. The last of the line. His breath caught. You're saying, I'm the last Greengrass, she said, her voice steady. And according to this, my blood completes the cycle. If I stand at the heart of the sigil when the next eclipse passes over Stonehenge, the curse will either end, or consume me to fuel itself. Harry reached for her hand without thinking. Then we destroy the sigil first. She didn't pull away. You don't understand. The sigil isn't just carved in stone. It's written in us, in our names, in our magic. It's in the way our wands tremble when we speak our family oaths. It's in the dreams I've had since I was a child, of fire in the dark, of a voice calling me home. Outside, the distant chime of Big Ben echoed through the tunnels, muffled by centuries of earth. The air grew colder. Harry squeezed her hand. Then we face it together, not as heirs, not as legacies, as people who choose what comes next. Daphne looked at him. Really looked, and for the first time the weight in her eyes flickered, just slightly, with something like hope. Rain tapped a steady rhythm against the high, arched windows of St. Mungo's, each droplet catching the dim green glow from the enchanted chandeliers above. The air smelled of antiseptic herbs and something deeper, more unsettling, like old parchment left too long in a damp vault. Daphne Greengrass stood just inside the ward door, her cloak still damp from the downpour outside, fingers clenched around the strap of her satchel. She didn't want to look at the bed, but she had to. Astoria lay beneath a heavy quilt of woven moonstone thread, her skin nearly as pale as the sheets. Her breath came in shallow, measured pulses, each one a quiet betrayal of the vibrant girl who had once danced through the gardens of Greengrass Manor. A faint silver mist curled from her fingertips, dissipating into the air, the last remnants of a magic that refused to stay. "You're late," said Healer Vane, stepping from behind a curtain with a scroll in hand. His voice wasn't unkind, but it carried the weight of things unsaid. "I was at the ministry," Daphne replied, voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "They're still arguing over jurisdiction." "As if that matters now," Vane exhaled through his nose, unrolling the parchment. "Her core continues to degrade. The curse isn't just draining her magic. It's rewriting her lineage signature. By next week, she may not register as a Greengrass at all. Not in blood, not in magic." Daphne closed her eyes. There has to be something. A counter-charm, a reversal. We've tried everything in the approved texts. Even pulled down scrolls from the restricted wing archives. Nothing touches it. This isn't just dark magic, Miss Greengrass. It's older. Purpose-built. And it knows your family. She opened her eyes. Then it knows me. Thane hesitated, then lowered his voice. There's more. The same pattern appeared in the McKinnon girl last night. Then 2 hours ago we received word from the Macmillans. Their eldest son collapsed during breakfast. Same symptoms. Magic fading, ancestral marks, vanishing. It's spreading. Daphne's breath caught. How many? 7 families now. All pure blood. All with documented founder ties. She swallowed hard. Potter thinks it's connected to something beneath Diagon. An old chamber, sealed since the founder's time. And you believe him? I believe my sister is dying, Daphne said. Sharper than she meant to. And if there's even a chance that what's down there holds the answer, I'll crawl through every cursed tunnel in this city to find it. Thane studied her for a long moment, then nodded. There's one thing. Last night Astoria spoke in her sleep. Not words. Names. Rowena. Salazar. And one I didn't recognize. Star Alara. Star? Daphne stirred sharply. Alara? She whispered it 3 times. Then started crying. We couldn't wake her for nearly an hour. A chill ran through Daphne, not from the cold, but from memory. Her grandmother, long ago, had spoken that name only once. Late at night, dunk on fire. Whiskey, staring into the embers. Star. Ilara was the one he loved. Star, she'd murmured. Star, not Rowena, not Helena. Her, Star Daphne, had thought it a fairy tale. A myth. Now it felt like a key. Keep me informed, she said, stepping toward the bed. She brushed a strand of hair from Astoria's forehead, careful not to disturb the thin chain around her sister's neck. The Greengrass heirloom, once glowing with ancestral light, now dull as stone. Daphne, Astoria murmured, her voice a thread. Don't go back. The walls. They remember. I have to, Daphne whispered. I'll find what they buried, I promise. Outside, thunder rolled over London, shaking the glass. And deep beneath the city, something ancient stirred. Candle flames froze mid-flicker as the first curse shattered the glass case. Harry spun, wand already in hand, heart slamming against his ribs like a caged bird. Dust rained from the vaulted ceiling of the abandoned Greengrass archive, a forgotten sub-basement beneath Diagon Alley, its stone walls lined with crumbling scrolls and sealed chests. Across the room, Daphne dropped the brittle parchment she'd been examining, her pale eyes wide but steady. They found us, she whispered, low and urgent, already moving behind a stone plinth etched with the Greengrass crest. Harry didn't answer. He pressed his back against the cold wall, listening. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, echoing from the spiraling staircase beyond the arched doorway. 3, maybe 4. Not ministry, not aurors. These movements were too controlled, too silent. A shadow stretched across the threshold. Daphne Greengrass, a voice drawled, smooth as oil. We know you took it. Return the sigil, and perhaps your death will be swift. Harry exhaled. Dark wizards. Fanatics, most likely. Remnants of old blood cults drawn to the curse like vultures to carrion. He glanced at Daphne. She shook her head slightly. No artifact. Just theories. Just fragments of text about the Founder's wards and the blood debt enchantment. But they wouldn't believe that. I have nothing you want, Daphne called, her voice calm despite the tremor in her fingers. You're wasting your lives. A laugh, dry, humorless, echoed in the chamber. Then the first curse came, a searing red bolt that cracked the plinth where Daphne had stood seconds before. Harry lunged, tackling her behind a stack of iron-bound tomes. The air sizzled as another curse scorched the stone floor. Stay down, he muttered. I can fight, she snapped, already raising her wand. I know you can. But not here. Not blind. He peered around the edge. 2 figures in tattered black robes, hoods drawn, wands raised. The third lingered in the doorway, chanting under his breath, summoning something. Shadows coiled at his feet, thickening. Harry acted. Expulso. The blast hit the floor between the two in the front, sending stone and ancient parchment flying. One wizard screamed as debris sliced his arm. The other deflected with a snarled protego, but staggered back. Daphne didn't hesitate. Sectum Sempra. Her spell slashed through the air, precise and deadly. The injured wizard collapsed, clutching his chest. The third, still chanting, raised a hand. The shadows surged forward like living smoke. Down. Harry shoved Daphne again, rolling as the darkness lashed past, freezing the air where they'd been. The remaining attacker advanced, wand glowing with violet light. "You don't understand what you're guarding, girl. The sigil is ours by blood. By right. I'm guarding the truth," Daphne spat, firing a hex that burst into a storm of iron moths. They swarmed the wizard, clattering against his robes, pecking at his face. He screamed, flailing. Harry focused on the chanter. This was worse. Something old. Something hungry. He remembered the texts. Shadowbinders. Necromantic remnants from the First War, thought extinct. But Voldemort had experimented, and now someone had revived them. He lunged, not with a curse, but with light. Lumos Maxima. The spell exploded like a miniature sun, flooding the chamber. The shadows shrieked, actual human-like shrieks, and recoiled, writhing as if burned. The chanter staggered, his chant broken. Daphne was on her feet. With a flick of her wand, she sent a binding chain of silver light spiraling around the blinded wizard. He fell, thrashing. Silence, save for their ragged breaths. Harry turned to her. "You okay?" She nodded, face pale but composed. They believed I had something real. They were desperate. He looked at the fallen men. "And someone told them lies." She stepped forward, gazing at the ruined parchment they'd been studying, the one that mentioned the chamber's seal, the Founder's Pact, and a name, Ilara, a woman erased from history, a lover perhaps of Salazar himself. "They're afraid," Daphne murmured, "not of what I have, but of what I might find." Harry met her eyes. The air still hummed with residual magic. Somewhere deep below, something stirred. The curse wasn't just draining bloodlines, it was waking something up. And they were running out of time. The air beneath Diagon Alley tasted of damp stone and old iron, thick with the scent of forgotten spells. Harry ran his fingers along the curved wall of the tunnel, the torchlight flickering against runes that pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat buried beneath centuries. Dust clung to his boots, swirling in the draft that shouldn't have been there. This deep, the earth was supposed to be still. "They didn't want this found," Daphne whispered, her voice tight. She stood a step behind, wand drawn, eyes scanning the archway ahead. The stones there were darker, veined with silver glyphs that shifted when not looked at directly. These wards, they're not just protective, they're selective. Harry glanced at her. Her pale hair was tied back severely, but a loose strand clung to her temple, damp from the chill below. There was no fear in her face, only calculation, and something deeper, something wary. He'd seen that look before, in the aftermath of war, on people who'd learned too young that trust was currency paid in blood. "They respond to blood," he said, remembering the last chamber, the one that had rejected his touch until Daphne pressed her palm to the stone. But not just any blood. Slytherin lineage. "And Potter," she said, stepping forward. "You shouldn't have gotten past the outer seal, unless it's not just about blood," Harry finished. "Intent matters too." They had argued for hours above ground, debating whether to come. The ministry had forbidden further excavation. 5 pure blood families afflicted, their ancestral magic siphoned away like breath from a corpse, their family marks, those magical sigils branded into the soul, gone. And now Daphne's name shimmered weaker every dawn, like ink dissolving in rain. But the curse led here. Beneath the ruins of a forgotten apothecary, beneath layers of forgotten wards and time, to a door that bore the serpent sigil of Salazar himself. Harry drew his wand and sliced his palm with a muttered star defindo star, shade blood wild, dark in the torchlight. Daphne did the same without flinching. "Together," he said. She nodded. They pressed their hands to the stone. At first, nothing. Then a low groan, like stone grinding against stone, and the silver veins ignited, serpentine, hungry. The blood didn't drip. It was drawn in, absorbed like water into parched earth. The glyphs flared, then rearranged, coiling into a phrase in ancient Parcel tongue. Star I serve only those who seek not power but truth. Star Harry exhaled. It knows. Daphne's fingers twitched beside his. What do we say? He didn't answer. Instead, he thought, clear, deliberate, of Ginny's empty gaze when the healers said her magic might never return. Of Andromeda Tonks weeping over a photo of Teddy, his magic flickering like a dying candle. Of Daphne, pale and proud, refusing to beg even as her world unraveled. We seek to heal, he thought. Not to claim, not to dominate, to mend. Daphne's breath hitched. Her voice, when it came, was barely audible. I swear, I do not wish to restore my family's name for pride, only so that others do not suffer as we have. The door shuddered. Then, with a sound like a sigh, it split down the center and swung inward. Beyond lay a chamber untouched by time. Torches flared to life along the walls, revealing shelves carved from black stone, filled with vials of swirling silver liquid, scrolls bound in serpent-hide, and a single pedestal at the center. Upon it rested a heart-shaped locket, cracked down the middle, pulsing with a faint, sorrowful light. Harry stepped forward, but Daphne caught his wrist. "That's not just any locket," she whispered. "That's the first Horcrux," Harry said. "Or what's left of it." But it wasn't just a remnant, it was breathing. And beneath the stone floor, something deeper still began to stir. The air in the chamber was thick with the scent of damp stone and something older, ozone and ash, the ghost of spells long extinguished. Harry's breath curled in front of him like smoke, though the cold wasn't from the temperature. It came from the walls, the floor, the very magic that pulsed beneath their feet. A low, rhythmic thrum that made his teeth ache. Torchlight flickered against ancient runes carved into the obsidian pillars, their meaning obscured by time and deliberate defacement. Daphne stood beside him, her wand steady, her face pale but composed. She had not spoken since they'd crossed the threshold, and Harry didn't blame her. The weight of the place pressed down like a physical thing. "This wasn't on any map," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum. "Not even in the Greengrass family grimoires." Harry nodded, stepping forward. His boots echoed, though the floor seemed to swallow sound a heartbeat later. At the center of the chamber, rising from a dais of cracked marble, stood an orb, perfectly spherical, black as a starless night, yet glowing with an inner light that pulsed like a heartbeat. It hovered just above the stone, suspended by nothing, tendrils of shadow coiling around it like serpents made of smoke. "It's alive," Harry murmured. "No," Daphne corrected, her voice tight. "It's remembering." He glanced at her. She hadn't taken her eyes from the orb. There was something in her expression, recognition perhaps, or dread. "You've seen something like this before?" She hesitated. "Not this, but stories. My grandmother once spoke of a vessel, hidden beneath the old families, meant to hold what magic couldn't bear to forget. She called it a star lacrima sanguinis star, a tear of blood, a repository of guilt." Harry frowned. "Guilt? Not just any guilt, the kind that shapes history, the kind that magic itself refuses to release." He stepped closer. The hum grew louder, vibrating in his chest. As he neared, the orb's surface shifted. The darkness rippled, and for a moment, a face flickered within, pale, hollow-eyed, mouth open in silent scream. Then it was gone. "We shouldn't be here," Daphne said. But she didn't move. Her fingers twitched at her side, as if resisting the urge to reach out. "We don't have a choice," Harry replied. "Your family's mark is fading. So are the Malfoys, the Knots, the Rosiers. If this thing holds the truth, we need it. And if it's a trap," he turned to her, "then it's one we've already walked into." A silence passed between them, taut as a bowstring. Then slowly, Daphne exhaled. "There's a key, blood and intent. That's what the stories say." Harry looked back at the orb. "Whose blood?" "Ours," she said simply. "Heirs of the line." He didn't hesitate. Drawing his wand, he traced a line across his palm. Blood welled, dark in the dim light. Daphne did the same, her jaw clenched. Together they stepped forward and pressed their bleeding hands against the obsidian surface. The chamber exploded with light. Not fire, not heat, memory. Harry saw stone halls beneath London, older than the Ministry, older than Hogwarts. He saw figures in robes of silver and green, their faces twisted in grief and fury. He saw a ritual, blood spilled onto ancient stone, names carved in pain, a curse not born of hatred, but of love turned to ashes. A woman weeping over a cradle, a man screaming into the void, a vow whispered in Latin, "Star, let our guilt remain, so our children may live." Star, and then Voldemort, not as a man, but as a shadow, drawn to the sight like a moth to flame. He hadn't created the curse. He had found it, twisted it, used it. The vision shattered. Harry fell back, gasping. Daphne collapsed to her knees, her breath ragged. The orb still hovered, but now its glow was softer, the shadows retreating. "They sacrificed themselves," she whispered. "The founders of our families, they bound their guilt to this place, to protect us." Harry looked at his palm. The wound had closed, but the weight of what they'd seen, the love, the loss, the terrible cost remained. And deep within the orb, something stirred. Not finished, not yet. The air in the chamber thickened, humming with a resonance that made Harry's molars ache. The obsidian orb cradled between them on the cracked marble pedestal, pulsed like a dying star. Daphne's fingers twitched near her wand, her breath shallow. She hadn't wanted to touch it. None of them had. But the curse was in her blood now, her mother's hands translucent, her ancestral ring flickering like a candle nearing its end. "It's not just draining us," she whispered. "It's unmaking us." Harry nodded, eyes fixed on the orb's surface. It had been buried beneath the ruins of an old Greengrass estate, warded by spells older than Hogwarts. The Ministry had sent him because he'd survived worse. They sent Daphne because she was the last one with the right blood to open the vault. He reached out. She caught his wrist. "You don't know what it'll show," she said, voice taut. "I know what it's already done to your family," he answered. "Let me see." She hesitated, then released him. The moment his palm met the cold stone, the chamber dissolved. They stood on a hill overlooking a valley cloaked in silver mist. The sky was the deep violet of twilight, but no stars pierced it. Below, figures in long, rune-embroidered cloaks gathered in a wide circle. Their faces were indistinct, blurred by time, but their voices carried, low, chanting, woven with threads of her own magic. "This is before Hogwarts," Daphne murmured. "Before the bloodlines were named." The magic in the air tasted metallic, heavy with intent. Harry felt it coil in his chest, a pressure behind his ribs. One figure stepped forward, tall, crowned with antlers carved from bone, a staff of yew in hand. His voice cut through the chant. "We bind our strength to blood," he intoned. "That our knowledge, our purpose, may not fade with death. Let each generation carry the spark. Let our purity be our protection." Daphne flinched. Purity. It wasn't about blood supremacy then, Harry said, watching the ritual. It was about preservation. They were afraid of being forgotten. The antlered wizard raised his staff. The ground split, revealing veins of molten light. One by one the others pierced their palms, letting blood drip into the fissure. The light swallowed it, surged upward, and spiraled into the sky, then fell like rain, embedding itself in their foreheads, their chests, their children's hands. "It's a covenant," Daphne breathed. "They gave their magic so future generations could wield it, but it was always meant to be a gift." The vision shifted. Now they stood in a war-torn hall, the same valley in ruin. The descendants of those wizards, faces familiar to Daphne from family portraits, fought among themselves. Houses turned on houses. A woman in Greengrass screamed as her magic was wrenched from her by a cousin's curse. A man bearing the rosier crest collapsed, his mark burning away. And then, pain, a new voice, ancient and furious, echoed through the memory. "You who pervert the gift," it boomed, "who hoard magic like gold and twist blood into chains, you shall know the weight of your pride." The earth trembled. The veins of light beneath the surface turned black. The ancestral marks on their arms, those glowing sigils of lineage, began to crack. Daphne gasped. The curse. It wasn't an attack from outside. It's the magic itself, rejecting us. Harry watched as the last of the original wizards, now a spectre with hollow eyes, placed a hand on the bloodied earth. "If you betray the purpose," he whispered, "the bond will turn to blight. The magic will return to the stone, and you will be nothing. The vision shattered. They were back in the chamber, gasping. The orb had gone dark. Daphne staggered back, her hand over her heart. All this time we weren't being punished by enemies. We were being undone by our ancestors. Harry looked at her, really looked. Not at the pure-blood heiress, not at the Ministry's reluctant asset, but at the girl whose magic was fading because her family had forgotten what it meant to be chosen. "This curse isn't about extermination," he said slowly. "It's about memory. It's forcing us to remember, or vanish." Outside, thunder rolled. Somewhere in London, another family's mark flickered out. And deep beneath the earth, the stone waited. The stone corridor trembled, dust sifting from the ceiling like ash as the last of the cursed spirits wailed into silence. Harry's breath came in ragged bursts, his wand still raised, knuckles white. The air tasted of iron and decay, thick with the residue of dark magic. He turned slowly, his eyes finding Daphne crumpled against the cold wall, her pale face streaked with grime and something wet he didn't want to maim. Her fingers trembled around her wand, still pointed at the space where the shadow had lunged. "It's over," he said, voice rough, stepping toward her. She didn't answer. Her shoulders shook once, then again, and she pressed her forehead to her drawn-up knees, arms wrapped tight around herself as if trying to hold something in. Harry hesitated. He'd seen her composed, sharp, cutting through ministry bureaucracy with ice in her voice. He'd seen her calculating, wary, even mocking. But this was raw, human. He crouched beside her, careful not to touch. "Daphne." Her breath hitched. I felt it, inside my head, like it knew me, knew my blood. It whispered. She stopped, jaw clenched. What did it say? She lifted her head, eyes glistening but defiant. That I didn't belong. That I was the last. And soon even that would be erased. Harry exhaled slowly. He knew that fear. He'd lived with it, being the last of a line, haunted by ghosts he never met. "You're not gone yet." "No," she whispered. "But what if I'm all that's left? What if my name vanishes like the others? No trace, no magic. Just nothing." He reached out then, not with magic, but with his hand. Gently he brushed a strand of hair from her face, tucking it behind her ear. Her breath stilled. "Then we'll make sure it's remembered," he said. "Not just your name, you, what you've done, what you are." She looked at him, really looked, searching, uncertain. "Why do you care?" "Because I've been where you are," he said, alone. "Afraid that when the fight's over, no one will remember who you were, only what you survived. But you're more than your bloodline, Daphne, more than your name." A tear escaped, tracing a clean line down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. "It's easier to believe I'm not." He shifted closer, shoulder brushing hers. "Then let me believe it for you, until you can." For a long moment, silence settled between them, softer now. The torches flickered, casting warm light against the damp stone. Somewhere in the distance, water dripped, a slow, steady rhythm. Daphne leaned into him, just slightly, as if testing the weight of trust. "You're freezing," Harry murmured. "I'm fine." "You're shivering." She let out a breath that was almost a laugh. "Slytherins don't admit to being cold. Too bad. Gryffindors insist on sharing body heat." Before she could protest, he shrugged off his cloak and draped it around her shoulders. It was heavy, still warm from his body, smelling faintly of rain and something earthy. Him. She pulled it tighter, fingers curling into the fabric. "Thank you," she said, so quiet he almost missed it. He nodded, watching the play of firelight in her eyes. "We'll get through this, together." She turned her face toward his, close enough that he could feel her breath. "Even if the truth destroys what's left. Especially then." And for the first time since they'd stepped into the dark, beneath London, Daphne Greengrass smiled. Small, fragile, but real. Like the first light after a long night. Harry felt something shift inside him, something quiet and certain, blooming in the silence between heartbeats. Outside, the world still teetered on the edge. But here, in the damp cold, they were warm, alive. Not just survivors, partners, maybe even more. The air in the chamber was thick with the scent of dev stone, and something older, something metallic, like rusted iron or dried blood. Torchlight flickered along the curved walls, casting long, wavering shadows that seemed to twitch when no one was looking. Harry stood at the center of the circular room, his breath shallow, eyes fixed on the obsidian orb, resting on a pedestal of blackened silver. It pulsed faintly, a slow, rhythmic throb that matched the sudden ache behind his skull. Daphne stood a few paces behind him, her wand raised, fingers trembling only slightly. "Don't touch it, Potter. Not until we're sure." "It's calling me," he said, voice low, almost dreamlike. His hand hovered above the orb. "I can feel it, like a whisper under my skin." She stepped closer, the hem of her robes brushing the ancient runes etched into the floor. "That's not possible. This magic predates your birth. It shouldn't." "It knows me," Harry interrupted, eyes still locked on the dark surface. "Or something it does." He reached out. The moment his fingers brushed the orb's cold surface, pain exploded behind his eyes. A searing, white-hot spike drove through his scar, and he dropped to one knee with a gasp. His vision whited out and fractured into jagged shards of memory, not his own. A room lit by green flame, a man in a hooded cloak, face hidden, speaking in a voice like crumbling parchment, vials of black liquid bubbling in cauldrons. And then, faces, dozens of them, frozen in agony, mouths open in silent screams, their eyes hollow, their magic siphoned away into swirling tendrils of smoke. "Harry!" Daphne grabbed his shoulder, pulling him back. The orb dimmed instantly, its pulse fading. He was shaking, sweat beading on his brow, one hand clutching his forehead. "He was here," Harry whispered, voice raw. "Voldemort. Not just echoes. Starry Star was here. This place. It was one of his sanctums." Daphne's breath caught. "That can't be." The Ministry scoured every known hideout after the war. This chamber wasn't on any map. "It wasn't meant to be found," Harry said, rising slowly. "This wasn't just a hiding place. It was a laboratory. He was experimenting. On bloodlines. On Star Curse magic star. This orb," he looked back at it, wary. "It's not just holding the curse. It's star alive star with it. And it remembers him." She frowned. "But why would his magic respond to you? Unless it was designed to," he finished, "or unless it's still connected. To Starmy Star." The silence between them stretched, taut as a bowstring. Daphne's gaze flickered from the orb to Harry's scar, now throbbing faintly beneath his fringe. "The Horcrux," she said quietly. "When it was destroyed, not all of him died. Fragments linger. In places. In objects. In people." Harry nodded. "And this curse, it's feeding on that. It's not just attacking pure bloodlines. It's using the remnants of his work, twisting them. The mark erasure. It's not random. It's systematic, like he was trying to rewrite blood itself." Daphne turned to the stone pedestal, tracing one of the runes with careful fingers. "These inscriptions, they're in a dialect of ancient Latin, but with parcel tongue syntax woven in. It's a binding, a containment spell gone wrong. The curse was supposed to be star-controlled star, not released. He lost control," Harry said. "Or someone else triggered it later." A cold draft swept through the chamber, and the torches dimmed. The orb flickered once, then glowed again. Softer this time, like a heartbeat reawakening. From deep within the stone walls, a whisper echoed, too faint to make out words, but chillingly familiar. Harry's scar burned again, not with pain this time, but with recognition. "He's not gone," he said, voice barely audible. "Not entirely. And whatever this curse is, it's not just his legacy. It's his revenge," Daphne whispered. "And we're standing in the heart of it." Rain lashed against the tall arched windows of the minister's office, blurring the gaslit spires of the ministry below into streaks of hazy gold. Harry stood just inside the door, the cold weight of the obsidian orb cradled in his satchel, its presence a silent hum against his spine. Kingsley Shacklebolt sat behind his desk, fingers steepled, expression carved from stone. "We cannot allow this artifact to remain intact, Harry," he said, voice low but firm. 3 more families reported magic loss yesterday. The Knotts, the Rosiers, the Selwyns, all drained overnight. The Wizengamot is in uproar. They want it destroyed. Now." Harry shifted, the leather of his satchel creaking. "And if it's not just a weapon, if destroying it triggers something worse, then we face that consequence," Kingsley replied. But we cannot risk another wave. The curse is spreading faster than we predicted. The wards around ancient estates are failing. Bloodline sigils are vanishing from family tombs. This orb is the only physical link we've found. It's too dangerous to keep. Daphne Greengrass stood near the hearth, arms crossed, her pale eyes reflecting the dim firelight. She hadn't spoken since they arrived, but Harry felt her tension like a taut wire. Her own family's ancestral mark had faded 2 nights ago, just a faint shimmer now, like breath on glass. She had not cried, she had not raged, but he'd seen the way her fingers trembled when she traced the empty space on her wrist where the Greengrass sigil once glowed. "It's not just a cursed object," Harry insisted. "It's singing. Have you listened to it? There's a pattern, old magic, older than Hogwarts. Daphne's research points to Founder-era enchantments, woven into its core. If we smash it without understanding, then we may lose the only key to reversing the curse," Daphne finished, stepping forward. "Minister, my ancestors kept scrolls on lineage magic. Pre-Slytherin traditions. This orb isn't attacking bloodlines at random. It's targeting those who benefited from the purging of mixed heritage during the Blood Wars. It's selective, purposeful. Like a reckoning." Kingsley exhaled slowly, the lines around his eyes deepening. "A reckoning implies justice. What you're suggesting sounds like vengeance." "Maybe it's both," Harry said. "Voldemort's labs beneath the leaky, his experiments with blood purity, the stolen magic, the children he took. Daphne and I found traces of ritual anchors down there. This orb was buried beneath one. It's not just old, it's a response. A counter-curse that's been waiting." The silence settled, broken only by the crackle of burning embers and the drumming rain. Kingsley rose, walking to the window. "The Wizengamot meets at dawn. They'll vote on its destruction. I can delay them one day. No more. But if you're going to prove it's not just a weapon, you'll need proof, not theories, not hunches." Harry nodded. "One day, and Miss Greengrass," Kingsley added, turning, "if your family's archives hold anything at all, that could help, now is the time to share it." Daphne's jaw tightened, but she gave a single, sharp nod. They left through the flue, emerging in the dim warmth of Hermione's study at the Department of Mysteries. Shelves bowed under scrolls and glass orbs, the air thick with dust and old parchment. Hermione stood at a long oak table, a cracked tome open before her wand tracing glowing symbols in the air. "You were right," she said, without looking up. "The orb's resonance matches a spell described in the star Liber Sanguinis Aeterni star, the Book of Eternal Blood. It wasn't meant to destroy lineages. It was meant to restore balance, to return stolen magic to the descendants of those who were erased." Harry unslung the satchel, placing the orb on the table. It pulsed once, faintly, like a slow heartbeat. "So it's not a curse," Daphne whispered. "It's a key. And we've been treating it like a bomb." Hermione met Harry's eyes. "Destroying it won't stop the magic drain. It'll kill the only chance we have to reverse it. But if the Ministry finds out what it really is, they'll panic," Harry finished. "Or worse, someone will try to control it." Hermione stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Then you'll need to move before dawn. And you'll need something the Ministry doesn't have. Trust." The air in the chamber was thick with the scent of damp stone and old iron, like blood long dried on forgotten blades. Harry's wand trembled in his grip, casting a narrow beam of light across the mosaic floor. Ancient tiles depicting serpents coiled around wands, their eyes set with chips of emerald that seemed to follow their every move. Daphne stood beside him, her breath shallow, her fingers pressed against the cold wall as if drawing strength from the stone itself. "This wasn't supposed to be here," she whispered. This is Greengrass sigil work. I'd know it anywhere." Harry turned to her, frowning. "Your family built this?" "No, not built, but they sealed it." Her voice cracked. "There's a mark. Look there, beneath the serpent's fang. That's the crest of House Greengrass, but inverted. It's a ward, a warning." He stepped closer, crouching to examine the symbol. The stone had been scorched as though fire had once erupted from within. And it was broken. She didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the archway ahead, where a skeletal hand, long finger bones still clutching a wand, lay half buried in dust. The wand was blackened, split down the middle, But the carving along its length, it matched the sigil on the Greengrass family ring she wore. "You recognize it," Harry said quietly. "It belonged to Alaric Greengrass," she said, her voice hollow. "My great-grandfather's uncle. He vanished during the First Wizarding War. They said he died in hiding. He didn't." They moved forward, boots crunching over shattered glass and charred parchment. The chamber opened into a rotunda, its walls lined with stone tablets, etched in High Latin. Harry lit his wand brighter, and the inscriptions flared to life, names, spells, and a single recurring phrase. Star sanguis traditoris, lumen extinguitor star. The betrayer's blood, the light is extinguished. Daphne froze. That's the curse. That's what's affecting us. "But why your family?" Harry asked. She stepped toward the central dais, where a basin of black stone sat, empty now but stained with something dark that hadn't washed away in decades. Around it, 4 sigils were carved, one for each house, but the Slytherin mark was defaced, slashed through with a jagged line, and beneath it, a name. Star Daphne Greengrass, co-architect, sacrificed of his own will. Star. "No," she breathed. "No, that's not possible." Harry reached for her arm, but she pulled away, stepping back as if burned. "He didn't die in hiding," she said, her voice rising. "He helped make this curse. It wasn't a weapon against Voldemort. It was meant to stop the Founder's magic from being corrupted. They were afraid Salazar's legacy was being twisted into something monstrous. So they created a failsafe, a spell that would sever the bloodline magic of anyone who used dark magic to claim pure blood supremacy. And Alaric helped build it," Harry realized. "Yes, but he didn't sacrifice himself to stop it. He sacrificed himself to star it. When he saw what pure blood extremism was becoming, he activated the curse on his own blood, on his own name. He cursed his descendants, my ancestors." Silence settled like dust. "So you're not just a target," Harry said slowly. "You're the key. The curse responds to Greengrass blood. It's waiting for someone to complete what Alaric started." She looked at him, eyes glistening. "Then I have to break it, not destroy it. Star it. He didn't want to erase our magic. He wanted to purify it, to force us to choose power or honor." Harry stepped forward, close enough to see the tremor in her hands. "You don't have to do this alone." "I do," she whispered, "because if I don't, the curse will keep spreading. It'll consume everyone. Weasleys, Longbottoms, even your friends. It's not just pure bloods, it's anyone whose magic is tied to the old lines, and it won't stop until the balance is restored." He nodded, gripping his wand tighter. "Then I'll stand guard. But this choice, it's yours." She took a breath, then walked to the basin, placed her palm over the stain, and began to speak in Latin, words she'd never learned, but that rose from some deep, ancestral well within her. The chamber trembled. The emerald eyes in the serpent mosaics flared green, and far beneath their feet, something old and sleeping began to stir. The air beneath the ministry's lowest sublevels tasted of damp stone and old iron, thick with the silence of centuries. Harry's wand cast a narrow beam of blue light that trembled slightly in his grip, as he and Daphne moved through the narrow tunnel, their footsteps muffled by centuries of dust. The orb, cold, pulsing faintly with a silver glow, was wrapped in a strip of enchanted velvet and pressed against Daphne's chest beneath her cloak. She could feel its rhythm, slow and steady, like a heartbeat not her own. "We're close," she whispered, her voice brill. "The warding sigils on the last archway. Their Greengrass design, my grandmother's hand." Harry glanced at her, eyes shattered but alert. "That means we're not the only ones who'll recognize them." A cold draft curled around them, carrying the scent of burnt parchment and something fouler, ozone decay. Daphne stiffened. "They're here." No sooner had she spoken than a low, guttural chant echoed through the corridor. Shadows flickered at the edge of the light, and from the dark, figures emerged, robed in tattered black, hoods drawn, wands held like talons. Their faces were gaunt, some marked by the same withered veins that had begun to trace Daphne's own skin before they found the orb. "Greengrass," one hissed, stepping forward. His voice was cracked, but familiar. Electo Caro's cousin, if Harry remembered the files right. "You carry what belongs to us. The orb is not yours. Daphne said, stepping in front of Harry. "It never was. It answers to blood, not greed. It answers to power," the man spat. "And we have paid in blood already. Look at us, robbed of our magic, our names spat upon. The Dark Lord promised restoration. This is the key." Harry stepped up beside her, wand raised. "Voldemort's promises were lies. This isn't restoration. It's a curse wearing a pretty face." A low laugh rippled through the group. "You always were a fool, Potter. But you don't understand what it means to lose everything. We've been hunted, starved, buried alive by your so-called peace. And now magic itself is dying in our veins." Daphne's hand tightened around the orb beneath her cloak. "And you think stealing ancient magic will fix that? The Founders bound this to balance, not conquest. Take it by force, and it will burn you to ash. Then let it," another voice snarled from the shadows. "Better to die in fire than fade like ghosts." They moved as one. Spells erupted. Crimson, sickly green, curses that warped the air like heat over stone. Harry deflected a killing curse with a shield charm that cracked under the strain, while Daphne dropped to one knee and slammed her palm against the floor. Ancient runes flared beneath her touch, family wards, long dormant. The ground trembled, and a wall of spectral silver light surged upward, slicing through two attackers before they could cast again. "They're weakening," Harry said, breathing hard. "They're not fighting like Death Eaters. They're desperate." "Because they are," Daphne replied, eyes locked on the leader. "They feel it, the curse in their bones, and they'd rather die believing in a lie than live with the truth." The leader raised a trembling hand. "Give us the orb, girl, or we'll take it from your corpse." Harry stepped forward, wand steady. "You want power? You want your magic back? Then listen, this isn't the way. The curse isn't stealing your magic. It's punishing the bloodlines for what they did. For generations of cruelty, of pride, of believing you were above the magic itself. Silence, broken only by the crackle of fading wards." "And the orb?" the leader whispered. "It's a key," Harry said, "but not to power, to atonement. You don't take it, you earn it." Daphne rose slowly, the orb now cradled in her hands. Its light pulsed stronger, responding to her voice as she spoke the old words, the vow of surrender, of remembrance, of reconciliation. The Death Eaters staggered back as the chamber filled with silver light, not from a spell, but from the stone itself, awakening. The leader fell to his knees, weeping, and in that moment, Harry understood. This was never about stopping the curse. It was about becoming worthy of surviving it. Rain lashed the cobbled streets of Nocturne Alley, like 1,000 whispered warnings. Harry staggered against the wall, breath ragged, his left arm slick with blood that wasn't entirely his. The air reeked of ozone, and something older, damp stone and rotting parchment, the scent of spells long buried. Daphne knelt behind an overturned cart, her silver hair plastered to her temples, wand raised in a trembling hand. "They're closing in," she said, voice low. "3 on the west alley, 1 circling behind." Harry nodded, jaw tight. He flicked his wand, holly and phoenix feather, 12 inches, unyielding in his grip for 12 years, but it sparked weakly. The curse that had struck the Greengrasses, the Knots, the Rosiers, it wasn't just draining bloodlines, it was unraveling magic itself, twisting the very threads that held spells together. A flash of violet light seared the air. Harry threw himself forward, rolling just as the curse shattered the wall where his head had been. The stone exploded, raining dust and splinters. He fired back, a sharp star, stupefy star, that cracked against a shield charm. The attacker, hooded, face obscured, laughed, a dry, rattling sound, like bones in a sack. Daphne's voice cut through the din, clear despite the storm. "They're not after us. They're after the wand." Harry barely had time to process it before another curse came, a black tendril that writhed like a serpent. He deflected it with a star, Protego star. Shield flickered, thin as mist. His wand groaned in his hand, the wood splitting at the base, a hairline fracture. Then another. "No," he whispered. The final blow came from above. A figure dropped from a crumbling gargoyle, wand outstretched, screaming an incantation in a guttural tongue Harry didn't recognize. The spell struck his wand square on. It didn't just break. Its star screamed star. A high, keening wail tore from the wood as it split down the middle, the phoenix core flaring once, bright gold, defiant, before crumbling into ash that scattered in the wind. The recoil threw Harry backward, his head cracking against stone. Stars burst behind his eyes. He tried to rise. His fingers scrabbled at the wet ground, grasping for something, anything. But the holly was gone. The connection, the loyalty, the history, severed. Harry, Daphne's cry was sharp with fear. He looked up. The hooded figure loomed, wand raised for the killing curse. Then Daphne was between them. She didn't shout, didn't flinch. She stepped forward, arms wide, and began to chant. Not in Latin, not in any tongue Harry knew, but in a witting, archaic rhythm that made the air hum. Her wand traced a sigil in the air, one Harry had seen once in an old Greengrass ledger, 3 interlocking spirals, like roots beneath a tree. The ground trembled. From the cracks in the street, vines of pure silver light erupted, coiling around the attacker's legs, his arms, his throat. The man shrieked, but no sound came out. His wand clattered to the ground, snapping in two. Daphne's voice rose, steady now, resonant. Star by blood unbroken, by oath unsworn, I bind what was taken and maim it mine. Let the old magic answer, not to power, but to purpose. Silver. The silver light flared, blinding. Harry shielded his eyes. When he looked again, the attacker was gone, dissolved into shadow. The vines receded, sinking back into the stone. Daphne turned to him, breathing hard. Her wand was cracked too, the tip blackened. "You're an idiot," she said, voice shaking. "You should have dodged." He stared at her. "That spell, I've never heard anything like it." "It's not in any modern grimoire," she said, kneeling beside him. "It's from the star Liber Sanguinis star, my family's private archive. A warding charm used when the bloodline was threatened. It draws on ancestral magic, but..." She hesitated. "It's dangerous. It's never been tested in centuries." Harry touched the ash that had been his wand. "You saved me." "I saved Star, Yushai corrected. "And don't think this means I like you." A weak smile tugged at his lips. "Noted." But as the rain softened, and the shadows deepened, Harry felt it, the absence. Not just of his wand, but of the magic that had defined him since he was 11, and in its place something else stirred. A whisper beneath the stones, a pulse in the blood, and Daphne, breathing hard, her hands still clenched around her broken wand, looked at him with something like understanding. The curse wasn't finished, and neither were they. Rain lashed against the ancient windows of the Greengrass estate, rattling the panes like cold fingers tapping for entry. The house stood sentinel on a windswept moor, miles from any village, its stone walls thick with centuries of silence. Harry pulled his cloak tighter, shivering not just from the chill, but from the weight of what they'd left behind. Another family fallen, their magic siphoned away in the night, leaving only hollow breaths and fading memories. Daphne moved ahead without a word, her silver-blonde hair catching the dim light of a floating witch lamp. Her footsteps echoed down a long corridor, each one measured, as though she feared waking something better left asleep. "This way," she said, voice low. "The tapestries in the hall of lineage." They passed portraits of ancestors whose eyes followed them with quiet judgment. Some whispered in sibilant tones, their words too faint to catch. Others simply watched, stony-faced, proud, now cursed. Harry noticed the family crests along the walls, once gleaming, now tarnished, their magic dimming like dying embers. The hall of lineage was a cavernous room, its ceiling lost in shadow. In the center of the far wall hung the Greengrass tapestry, an immense weaving of enchanted threads that shimmered faintly, even now. It depicted generations of the family, their names stitched in golden script, their likenesses moving subtly, as if breathing within the fabric. But now, half of it was gone, not torn, not burned, simply erased. The threads had unraveled from within, as though something had reached into the magic of the weave and unmade it. The figures on the right side, older, more ancient, were still intact. But those from the last 2 centuries had faded, their faces smudged, their names blurred into illegibility. One figure near the center, Daphne's mother, was a ghost of color, her image flickering like a dying candle. Harry stepped closer, reaching out instinctively, then pulling back. "It's still alive," he murmured. "I can feel it, like a heartbeat. Daphne stood beside him, arms crossed. It's fighting, but it's losing. He turned to her. How long has this been happening? Since the first attack, she said. On the Yaxleys, we thought it was isolated. But then the Knots, the Rosiers, and now my father. Her voice didn't break, but her jaw tightened. The curse doesn't just take magic, it unravels bloodlines, like we never existed. Harry studied the tapestry, the way the curse had eaten through it in jagged lines, as if drawn by something with purpose. Not random, targeted. This isn't just a spell, he said. It's intelligent, it knows whom to erase. She nodded. That's why I brought you here. The Ministry won't listen. They think it's a backlash from old wards failing. But I've seen this symbol before. She pointed to a faint mark near the edge of the unraveling, a spiral with 3 dots beneath, almost invisible. In my grandmother's grimoire, she called it the Mark of the Unforgiven Pact. Harry frowned. I've never heard of it. It's not in any modern text. It's older, pre-Hogwarts. My family kept records, private ones. She hesitated. There's a story. About a 4th founder, one who was erased. He looked at her, heart-thudding. There were only 4, officially, she said. But magic remembers what history forgets. This curse, it's not just destroying families. It's finishing something that began centuries ago. A gust of wind howled down the chimney, and the tapestry fluttered. For a moment, the threads glowed faintly, gold and green, then dimmed again. Harry placed a hand on the stone wall, feeling the pulse of the house. This place is alive. It knows we're here. Daphne exhaled slowly. It's been waiting, for someone to see, to understand. Outside, the storm deepened. But inside, in the silence between them, something older stirred. Memory, guilt, and a whisper of a love that had once dared to cross bloodlines. And in the half-erased tapestry, a single thread pulsed once, faintly, like a heartbeat, refusing to die. The air in the chamber was thick with the scent of damp stone and old magic, a breath held too long beneath the weight of centuries. Dust motes hung suspended in the dim, silver-blue light cast by Harry's wand, swirling like reluctant spirits above the cracked mosaic floor. Before them, the tapestry clung to the wall like a scar, a weave of black thread and tarnished gold, its surface alive with runes that shifted when not observed directly, like memories refusing to be recalled. Daphne's fingers hovered over the fabric, gloved and dragon-eyed to protect against residual curses. Her breath came slow and measured, the way only someone raised among ancient wards and blood oaths knew how to breathe in places like this. These aren't just Slytherin markings, she murmured. They're layered, a cipher within a cipher. The outer ring is founder script, basic arithmancy really, but the inner weave, that's older. Predating Hogwarts, I think. Harry crouched beside her, tracing a sequence of angular symbols with the tip of his wand. The moment he touched them, the runes flared crimson, and a low hum vibrated through the stone beneath their feet. The sound built into a whisper, not in any language he knew, but one his bones seemed to remember. It tugged at the edges of his scar, a faint, cool pressure. "Do you hear that?" he asked. Daphne stilled. "Yes, it's not sound, it's intent. The runes are trying to speak, but not to ears, to magic." She unclasped the silver locket at her throat. Her family heirloom, the Greengrass seal, etched into its surface, and pressed it against the center of the tapestry. The metal heated instantly, glowing with a soft green luminescence. The runes responded, realigning like stars settling into constellations. Lines of light branched outward, forming a spiral that pulsed in time with their breathing. "The incantation," she whispered. "It's here, hidden in the weave of the curse itself. A reversal, but not a simple undoing. It requires a vessel, a life willingly given to anchor the balance." Harry looked at her. "You're saying someone has to die." "Not just die," she corrected, voice brittle. "Surrender their magic. Completely. The curse feeds on lineage, on inherited power. To break it, you must offer back something of equal weight. A legacy, a name, a future. It's not about blood, Harry. It's about sacrifice as currency." A silence stretched between them, filled only by the distant drip of water and the whispering runes. Harry thought of Neville. his magic flickering like a dying candle after the Knot estate fell. Of Susan Bones, pale and trembling in St. Mungo's, her family crest now blank parchment. Of Daphne, who had lost her younger sister to the first wave, her magic fading like mist at dawn. And he thought of Voldemort, how he had torn his soul to escape death, how he had twisted blood and magic into weapons. This curse, it felt like an echo, a child of that same arrogance. "We don't have to decide now," Daphne said, but her voice cracked on the words. "We can find another way." Harry reached for her hand, the one still pressed against the locket. Her skin was cold. "You already know there isn't." She didn't pull away. Her eyes, gray as stormlight, held his. "It doesn't have to be you." "No," he said, "but it makes sense. I've already died once. Maybe that counts for something. That's not funny." "I wasn't trying to be." A faint smile touched her lips, gone as quickly as it came. She turned back to the tapestry, running her fingers over a cluster of runes, shaped like entwined serpents. "There's a phrase here, repeated in the countercharm, amor quinos tenet in umbra. Love that holds us in shadow. It's not just about sacrifice, it's about connection. The one who gives must be tied to those they save, not by blood, but by something deeper." Harry felt it then, the quiet truth between them, the nights spent poring over forbidden tomes in the restricted section, the way she had shielded him from a cursed ward in the Malfoy crypt without hesitation, the way she looked at him now, not as the chosen one, but as Harry. He didn't say it, but he knew, and perhaps she did too. Outside, the first cracks of dawn split the London sky. Deep beneath the city, the runes pulsed once, softly, like a heartbeat, remembering its rhythm. The silence in the infirmary was not the peaceful kind, but a heavy, suffocating thing that pressed against Daphne's chest like a stone. Astoria lay motionless in the hospital bed, her pale fingers curled gently atop the white linen, her breaths so shallow they seemed more like memories of breathing than real ones. The monitors around her hummed with soft, steady tones, but Daphne knew better than to trust them. Magic didn't leave a trace on Muggle devices, and whatever had stolen her sister's voice, her movement, her very spirit, was no natural illness. She gripped Astoria's hand, cold despite the warmth of the room, and whispered, "Wake up, please." No response. No flutter of eyelids, no twitch of recognition. Just the same stillness that had taken root 3 days ago, after Astoria had touched the Greengrass family ring, the one that had cracked down the center, its ancestral magic snuffed out like a candle in a storm. Harry stood near the door, his hands shoved deep into his coat pockets, watching. He hadn't left. Not since the moment Daphne had said the Patronus, a silver serpent that had coiled around his ankle before vanishing, her voice raw with fear. He arrived within minutes, breathless and wide-eyed, demanding answers she didn't have. "She's still breathing," he said now, stepping closer. "Still alive." "That's not enough," Daphne snapped, then immediately regretted it. She closed her eyes. "I'm sorry, I don't understand what's happening." She didn't cast anything, didn't say a spell. She just touched the ring and her voice broke, and she fell. Harry reached out, hesitated, then gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "We'll figure it out." His touch was warm, grounding. It reminded her that she wasn't alone, not truly. The Ministry was still sifting through records, chasing dead ends, while the curse crept further into the old families. The Sabinists had lost their heir's magic completely. The Knots were quarantined behind wards so thick they blocked even owls. And now Astoria, she was the only one who still believed in us, Daphne murmured. "Even when I stopped, when I learned what our parents really stood for, what blood purity cost, she still believed we could change, that the name Greengrass could mean something good." Harry didn't offer empty comfort. He knew better. Instead, he pulled a small, charred notebook from his coat, one recovered from the ruins beneath the Department of Mysteries. "I found something. In the old Founder's archives, there's a ritual, ancient, pre-Hogwarts, meant to bind a family's magic to the land, a covenant, but if broken, it doesn't just sever the magic, it takes the vessel." Daphne turned to him, her eyes sharp. "You're saying the families, we're not just cursed, we're part star of the curse." "Not cursed, punished," he said quietly. "The ritual was meant to protect, but it required sacrifice, a willing surrender of power to maintain balance. When your ancestors turned away from that, when they hoarded magic instead of nurturing it, the magic didn't vanish. It waited. And now it's collecting its due. He nodded. Astoria didn't trigger this. She's not the cause, but she's pure of heart, truly. No guilt, no greed. That makes her receptive. A bridge. Daphne stared at her sister's face, so still, so young. Then she's not unconscious. She's somewhere else. In the memory of the magic, Harry said. If we're going to reach her, we'll have to go in. Together. She looked at him then, really looked. At the scar on his forehead, at the weariness in his green eyes, at the quiet strength that had carried him through wars and ghosts. And for the first time since this began, she didn't feel afraid. Then let's bring her back, she said, standing. Before the silence becomes permanent. Outside, the sky darkened. Somewhere beneath London's streets, ancient wards stirred, and deep in the roots of forgotten spells, a girl with silver blonde hair walked through a garden that hadn't existed in centuries, waiting. Rain tapped a slow, persistent rhythm against the high-arched windows of the restricted section, each drop echoing like a whispered secret in the silence. Harry traced the edge of an ancient tome with his fingertips, the leather cover cold beneath his touch, its spine cracked with age. Hermione stood across the table, her hair pulled back in a tight braid, eyes scanning lines of faded ink with a focus that bordered on feverish. "It's not just a curse," she said, her voice low but sharp. "It's a reversal, a negation spell woven through bloodlines, anchored in the earliest forms of soul magic, the kind the Founders warned against in the Star Codex Eterna Star." Harry glanced at her. Harry glanced up. "Soul magic? Like Horcruxes?" "Opposite," she corrected, turning the book so he could see a sketch. A serpent coiled around a hollow flame, its eyes two black voids. "This doesn't split the soul. It consumes it, not for immortality." Through erasure, Daphne stepped from the shadows near the shelves, her cloak damp from the rain outside. She hadn't spoken since they'd arrived, but her presence was a quiet weight, like the air before a storm. "My grandmother used to say our family mark, the silver rose on the inner wrist, was a promise written in blood. If the curse is unmaking that, it's unmaking Star, you Star," Hermione finished gently. "Not just your magic, your memory, your place in history." Daphne's jaw tightened. "Then how do we stop it?" Hermione hesitated, then flipped to a page near the end. Charcoal sketches of a room circle, its center marked with a sigil Harry had seen before, in a changer of secrets, in the fragments of Tom Riddle's diary. "The curse was born from a soul already fractured," she said. "Someone who tried to bind the Founder's legacy to their own will, but failed. The magic turned inward, became parasitic. It feeds on lineage, because that's what the caster valued, and feared." Harry's breath caught. "Voldemort." "No," Hermione said. "Before him, much earlier, but connected." Daphne exhaled sharply. "You're saying the curse began with one of his star ancestors. Salazar's bloodline didn't end with him," Hermione murmured. "It twisted, hid, and someone centuries ago tried to resurrect the old purity laws through forbidden magic. They used a ritual meant to purify the blood, but it backfired. The magic latched onto the caster's soul, and when they died, it didn't die with them. It slept, waiting." Harry ran a hand through his hair. "Until someone woke it. Or until it woke itself," Daphne said quietly. "My father always kept a relic in the vault, a silver locket, with a serpent and a rose entwined. He said it was a reminder of who we were. But when the curse took him, the locket crumpled to dust." Hermione's eyes widened. "That's it. The curse is tied to a physical anchor, a vessel that holds the original soul fragment. Destroy the vessel without unbinding the magic first, and the curse spreads. But if we find the source, if we reach the soul that first spoke the incantation, we can release it," Harry realized. "Not destroy, free star it." "The spell wasn't meant to harm," Hermione said. "Not at first. It was a spell of belonging, a desperate plea to be seen as worthy. But guilt corrupted it, and now it punishes everyone who carries that blood." Silence settled between them, thick with understanding. Daphne looked down at her wrist, where the ghost of the silver rose shimmered faintly beneath her sleeve. "So to save us, we have to forgive Star them Star," Hermione met her gaze. To break the curse, someone has to speak the unbinding, with compassion, with truth, and it has to be spoken in the place where the magic began. Harry nodded slowly. Beneath Hogwarts, in the old catacombs, where the first ritual was performed. Daphne lifted her chin. Then we go down there, together. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, and the candles flickered, but the light held, steady, as if waiting for the next thread to be pulled from the dark. The air beneath the city tasted of wet stone and old iron, thick with the breath of forgotten tunnels. Harry's wand tip glowed a steady blue, casting long, wavering shadows against the curved brick walls of the ancient passage. Water dripped somewhere ahead, each drop echoing like a heartbeat in the silence. Daphne moved just behind him, her steps careful, precise, no wasted motion, no unnecessary sound. She held her own wand low, its light a pale silver that seemed to repel the damp rather than cut through it. "This way," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper, yet it carried. "The energy, it's pulling, like a thread tied around my ribs." Harry glanced back. Her face was pale, lips slightly parted, as she followed some internal compass, only she could feel. The curse had touched her family 3 nights ago. Her mother still lay unconscious in St. Mungo's. Her magic siphoned clean, the Greengrass lineage mark on her forearm no a ghost of ink. Daphne hadn't slept since. And yet, here she was, descending deeper beneath London with him, into the roots of the world, where even the rats feared to tread. They reached a fork. The left tunnel sloped sharply downward, vanishing into blackness. The right curved gently, lined with crumbling mosaics of serpents and ravens entwined. Harry paused. "The ley line," he said. "It's stronger on the left." Daphne shook her head. "No, not the ley line. The star-cursed star. Sorry, it's not running with the magic of the land. It's star against star it. Like a wound in the current. And it's coming from the right." He studied her. There was no hesitation in her voice, only certainty. He trusted her instincts more than the maps the ministry had burned into panic. With a nod, he turned right. The mosaics grew more intricate as they walked. Faces half-formed in tile, eyed watching from centuries past. One serpent coiled around a chalice. In its mouth, a single drop of red glass. Daphne reached out, brushing her fingers over it. "This wasn't Salazar's work," she whispered. "Not alone. There's another hand here, older." Harry felt it then, a hum beneath his boots, a vibration in the marrow of his bones. The air darkened, not from lack of light, but as if the shadows themselves were thickening. His scar prickled faint but insistent, like a memory trying to surface. "Something's down there," he said. "Of course there is," Daphne replied, her voice tight. "That's why we're here." They pressed on. The tunnel opened into a circular chamber, its ceiling lost in darkness. In the center stood a dais of black stone, etched with runes that pulsed a dull, sickly green. Chains, ancient rusted, lay coiled around its base, still faintly warm to the touch. Harry stepped forward, and the floor answered. A low groan, like stone grinding against stone, and then the walls began to star move star. Not crumbling, not collapsing, star breathing. Star bring flared. The shadows stretched, reaching. Daphne grabbed his arm. "Don't touch it. That's not just a trap. It's a star memory star, a spell bound into the stone." He turned to her. "Whose?" She closed her eyes, breathing slowly. When she opened them, there were tears in the corners, though her voice remained steady. "It's not just the Founders. It's Star. Karstar. A woman. She loved one of them. But they cast her out, called her magic impure. She swore vengeance, not on the world, on the lies they built it on." Harry stared at the dais. The green light flickered, and for a moment he saw her. A woman with dark hair and kind eyes, chained not by iron, but by betrayal. "And Voldemort?" he asked. Daphne nodded. He found her, not her body, her starwork star. He twisted it, made the curse a weapon, but the heart of it, it was never about destruction. It was about being star, remembered star. The chamber trembled. The chains began to rattle. "We're not the first to come here," Daphne said, "but we might be the first who can listen." The air beneath the ministry's lowest vaults tasted of damp stone and old iron, thick with the scent of extinguished torches and something older, something buried. Daphne stood barefoot on the etched obsidian dyes, her breath shallow, her fingers clenched around the silver dagger passed down from her great-grandmother. The ritual required blood, yes, but not just any blood. Hers, pure, unadulterated, the last true drop of Greengrass magic before the curse could claim it too. Harry stood at the edge of the circle, wand in hand, eyes scanning the runes carved into the floor. They pussed faintly, a dull emerald glow that flickered like a dying pulse. He didn't speak, he knew better. This was not a moment for comfort. This was a reckoning. Daphne pressed the blade to her palm. The cut was clean, deliberate. Blood welled, dark in the dim light, and she let it drip onto the central sigil, a serpent coiled around a wilted rose. The moment the first drop touched stone, the chamber shuddered. A wind that wasn't wind rushed through the chamber. The torches flared blue. Daphne gasped as the vision took her. She was standing in a drawing room she'd never seen, yet knew instantly, the old Greengrass manor before the war, before the fire. Her grandfather, young and cold-eyed, stood over a kneeling figure, a half-blood healer accused of stealing a relic. The man pleaded, but his voice was muffled, as if underwater. Daphne tried to scream, but she had no voice. She was a ghost in her own bloodline. Her grandfather raised his wand. Not to kill. Worse. He whispered the ancient words, "Star oblitio sanguinis star," and the man's magic unraveled like thread pulled from cloth. His eyes went blank. His hands, once capable of healing charms, trembled uselessly. The relic, the Greengrass signet ring, was taken back, its emerald gleaming with stolen power. Daphne wrenched her mind away, but the vision shifted. Now she was in the dungeons beneath Malfoy Manor, not a prisoner, but a guest. Her great-aunt, Lysandra Greengrass, elegant in silver robes, stood beside Bellatrix Lestrange, laughing as a young girl, no older than 12, was forced to recite the names of her Muggle relatives before being cursed for each one. Daphne recognized the girl. She'd seen her in old ministry records. She'd died in Azkaban a year later, her mind broken. "Stop," Daphne whispered, but the ritual demanded more. Another flash. Her mother, years ago, turning away a cousin at the gates, disowned for marrying a Muggle-born. "We do not dilute," her mother had said, voice like frozen silk. "We preserve, we endure." Tears cut through the dust on Daphne's cheeks. Her knees trembled. The dagger slipped from her grip, clattering against the stone. Harry stepped forward, breaking the silence. Daphne's ship. His, shaking a shaking hand. "Not yet. It's not done." The final vision came like a dagger to the heart. She was in a forest at night, standing beside her father. He was younger, grief in his eyes. Before him, an old woman, veiled, trembling, pleaded in a language Daphne barely understood. Gobbledygook, a witch from the last surviving branch of a magical tribe, erased from history books. Her father raised his wand, not in violence, but in sealing. He bound her magic, sealed her memories, erased her name. Not for power, for protection. The ministry was hunting her. Her blood carried a cure for the early stages of the very curse, now tearing through pure bloodlines. "She could have saved us," Daphne whispered, the truth cracking her voice. "And we silenced her." The runes flared white, then black. The chamber stilled. Daphne collapsed to her knees, gasping. Blood still dripped from her palm, but the sigil had absorbed it. The curse on her family mark, the serpent and rose birth sigil on her shoulder, flickered, then pulsed once, weakly, with returning light. Harry rushed to her, catching her before she fell. "You're okay." "It's over." "It's not over," she said, voice raw. "It's only just begun. We didn't just inherit magic, Harry. We inherited guilt. And someone's making us pay for it." He held her gaze steady. "Then we'll face it together." Above them, deep in the stone, something ancient stirred. The air in the chamber was thick with the scent of ancient stone and burnt copper, the kind of smell that clung to the back of the throat and made breathing feel like swallowing dust. Faint blue veins of magic pulsed along the walls, remnants of a forgotten enchantment buried beneath London for centuries. Daphne lay on the obsidian dais, her face pale as parchment, lips tinged with violet. The curse had taken hold deeper than they'd feared, Her pulse was a fragile flutter beneath Harry's fingers, and her eyes, when they opened, were clouded with pain. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered, voice frayed at the edges. "This ritual, it wasn't meant for two." Harry knelt beside her, pressing a hand against her forehead. She was cold, too cold. "I'm not leaving you here, Daphne, not after everything we've found." She tried to smile, but it faltered. "You don't understand. The ritual requires a sacrifice, a life force to anchor the reversal. If you try to share it, then I'll share it," he said, cutting her off. His voice was steady, though his hands trembled slightly as he reached for the silver dagger lying beside the dais. "We've traced this back to Salazar's hidden sanctum, uncovered his guilt over the blood wards he helped create. This curse, it's not just about power, it's about balance. And you're tied to it. Your family's mark, your blood. You're the key, but not the anchor," she breathed. "You can't be both." Harry ignored her, slicing his palm with the blade. Blood welled, dark and heavy, dripping onto the engraved runes carved into the dais. The chamber responded instantly, a low hum building in the stone, the blue veins flaring white. Daphne gasped as the first wave of energy surged through her, her body arching off the stone. "No, Harry, stop." He placed his bleeding hand over the center sigil, then reached for her. "I'm not letting you die alone." Their fingers interlaced. This magic, raw, wild, and deep as the ocean, began to flow. It wasn't like casting a spell. It was like tearing open his chest and offering his heart. Power streamed from him, down his arm, into her. Her body shuddered, then stilled as the curse began to unravel. The violet in her lips faded, color returned to her cheeks. But Harry felt it, the pull, the draining. It wasn't just energy. It was memory, feeling, pieces of himself slipping away, the warmth of sunlight on his face at Hogwarts, the sound of Sirius's laughter, the weight of his wand in his hand, the instinctive certainty of star protego star, of star expecto patronum, star, gone like sand through fingers. Daphne's eyes snapped open. "Harry, you're magic. You're giving too much." "I'm giving enough," he gritted out. Teeth clenched. His vision blurred. The chamber spun. "The ritual needs balance. Your blood to break the curse, my magic to restore what was taken." "You'll be nothing," she cried, trying to pull away, but he held fast. "Then so be it," he said, quieter now. "If this is what it takes to stop it, to make sure no one else loses their family, their name, their magic, I choose it." Tears streaked down her face. "You don't get to decide for me, Harry. You don't get to erase yourself and call it noble." He managed a weak smile. "Funny. I think I just did." The chamber erupted in light. A column of gold and silver spiraled upward, cracking the ceiling, shattering centuries of silence. The curse shattered like glass, its remnants dissolving into the air. Daphne gasped, whole now, unbroken. But Harry collapsed beside her. He lay on the cold stone, breath shallow, body hollow. He tried to summon a spark. Just one, but nothing answered, not even a flicker. Daphne turned to him, cradling his head in her lap. "You idiot," she whispered, but there was no anger in it, only awe and grief. "You stubborn, reckless, beautiful fool." Harry's eyes fluttered. "Worth it," he murmured. And in the silence that followed, as the last echoes of ancient magic faded into the dark, Daphne bent down and kissed his forehead, soft, lingering, a promise written in touch. Outside, the first light of dawn touched the rooftops of London. Below, the world had changed, and one man, who had given everything, slept without dreams. The chamber beneath the city was silent now, the hum of ancient magic fading like the last breath of a storm. Stone walls that had pulsed with eerie blue light now stood cold, and still, slick with condensation and the residue of spells older than Hogwarts. Harry lay on the cracked mosaic floor, his chest rising and falling in slow, labored rhythm. His glasses were askew, one lens cracked, and his fingers twitched, as if still resisting some unseen force. Across from him, Daphne Greengrass sat propped against a broken pillar, her usually immaculate blonde hair matted with sweat and ash. Her breathing was shallow, but steady. A thin silver thread, the last echo of the ritual, shimmered between their outstretched hands before dissolving into the air. It was done. The curse that had crept through the pure bloodlines like a blight, silencing ancestral magic and erasing the sacred marks etched into blood, had been broken. Not destroyed. Harry didn't think it could be, but contained. Thouist. The Founder's seal, buried beneath the old wards of the Black family crypt, had accepted their offering, a piece of each of them. Not blood, not memory, but something harder to surrender, vulnerability. Harry turned his head slowly, wincing as pain shot through his neck. "You're still here," he said, voice hoarse. Daphne let out a weak laugh. "Where else would I go? My family manor is probably overrun with ministry aurors and curious reporters." He smiled despite himself. "We could obliviate them all. Start fresh, become farmers." "In Wiltshire? With sheep?" She arched an eyebrow. Even in exhaustion, the gesture so perfectly Daphne that Harry felt something warm bloom in his chest. "I'd rather face another ritual." They lapsed into silence, but it wasn't heavy. It was the quiet of shared exhaustion, of two people who had stood at the edge of oblivion and chosen to step back, together. Outside, rain began to fall, tapping against the grates above like distant fingers. The sound echoed in the chamber, soft and rhythmic, almost soothing. Harry summoned the strength to sit up, leaning heavily against the opposite pillar. He reached for his wand, but it was Daphne who handed it to him, her fingers brushing his. A jolt, subtle but unmistakable, passed between them. "You felt that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded. "Like recognition." "It's the balance," she murmured. "The ritual didn't just stop the curse, it linked us. Not magically, not like a bond, but something else. Like we're tuned to the same frequency." Harry looked at her, then really looked. The sharp angles of her face softened in the dim light. The usual walls she wore like armor now cracked, revealing something tender beneath. He had seen her afraid, furious, calculating. But never this open, never this real. "I didn't think you'd stay," he admitted. "After everything, the risks, the secrets." She turned her gaze to the shattered seal in the center of the room, its runes now dark. "I stayed because you asked me to, not because of duty, not because of blood, but because you saw me, even when I didn't want to be seen." He didn't know what to say. Words felt clumsy, inadequate, so he reached for her hand, and she let him take it. No grand declarations, no sweeping promises, just two people, bruised and weary, sitting in the ruins of something ancient, holding on. And for the first time in years, perhaps for the first time ever, Harry Potter felt not like a savior, not like a weapon, not a symbol. He felt like himself, and beside him, Daphne Greengrass breathed in, then out, and leaned her shoulder gently against his. The world above would wake to a new dawn. The families would heal. The ministry would write reports, assign credit, bury truths. But here, in the quiet dark, something else had been born, something worth protecting. The silence in the ministry's hidden archive was thick, broken only by the faint hum of containment runes etched into the stone walls. Harry stood with one hand braced against the cold obsidian pedestal, eyes locked on the cracked orb suspended above it. Daphne stood a few paces behind, her breath shallow, wand gripped tight at her side. The air smelled of damp parchment and something older, ozone and burnt cedar, the scent of unraveling magic. "It shouldn't be doing that," she said, voice low. The fissures in the orb had begun to glow, thin crimson lines spreading like veins across its surface. A low thrum pulsed from within, vibrating through the floor and up Harry's bones. He stepped back just as the first cracks split open with a sound like breaking glass and tearing silk. Then, light, not bright, but deep, unnatural. A crimson mist poured from the shattered orb, coiling like smoke over the pedestal. It didn't rise. Its starless and star. First 20. The temperature dropped. Frost feathered across the stone floor, creeping toward their boots. Daphne raised her wand. "Protego." The shield flared just in time. A tendril of shadow lashed out, striking the barrier with a hiss. The force knocked her back a step, but she held. Harry drew his wand, heart pounding. It's not just a memory, it's alive. The mist coalesced, forming a figure, tall, draped in tattered robes that seemed woven from smoke and void. Its face was indistinct, shifting, but when it turned toward them, Harry felt the weight of its gaze like ice down his spine. A whisper slithered through the room, not in any language he knew, and yet he understood. "Star, you should not have awakened me." Star Daphne's voice trembled, but her wand didn't waver. "This is ancient magic, older than the Ministry, older than Hogwarts." The shade lifted a hand, and the runes on the walls flickered, then died. One by one the lanterns dimmed. The archive plunged into mere darkness, lit only by the faint crimson glow emanating from the figure. Harry cast Expelliarmus. The spell ricocheted off an invisible barrier and shattered a glass case behind him. Daphne followed with Stupefy. The red bolt struck the shade's chest and passed through like water through smoke. It laughed, a dry, hollow sound that echoed from everywhere and nowhere. "Star, you carry his blood, Star," it said, turning fully to Harry. "Star, you are not him, not the boy who died, not the one who sealed me." Star Harry froze. "Who are you?" The shade's form shifted, features sharpening, pale skin, sunken eyes, a long nose, a face from history, from nightmares. "Star Salazar's shadow," Star it whispered. "Star, the forgotten vow, the blood that was spilled to bind me. And now, it unravels." Star Daphne stepped forward, voice steady now. "You were part of the curse, not its victim. You're the architect." The shade inclined its head. "Star, I am the consequence. The price paid when love was mistaken for weakness, when loyalty was buried beneath fear." Star, a tremor shook the floor. Above them, alarms began to wail, distant, metallic. The Ministry was waking. Harry's mind raced. Voldemort's experiments. He wasn't just trying to conquer death. He was digging, looking for something buried beneath the old magic. "Star, yes, Star," the shade hissed. "Star." He tasted the edge of the truth. But he did not understand. He sought power. "I am not power. I am memory. I am vengeance." "Star." It raised both hands. The shadows in the room surged, twisting into serpentine shapes. The air crackled. Daphne grabbed Harry's arm. "We can't destroy it. Not here. Not like this." "Then what do we do?" She met his eyes. "We run, and we find the rest of the story, before it kills everyone trying to remember." The shade screamed, a sound that shattered every remaining glass in the chamber, and the darkness lunged. The atrium shuddered as the entity surged forward, a writhing mass of blackened light and spectral tendrils that pulsed like a dying heart. Stone cracked beneath its passage, the Ministry's golden fountain splintering into rubble as the curse-born wraith fed on the magic in the air. Harry braced himself against the tremor, wand raised, emerald eyes locked on the shifting core of the thing, where a faint, ghostly sigil flickered like a dying star. Daphne stood at his side, her breath shallow, one hand pressed to the gash on her forearm. Blood dripped from her fingers, tracing ancient symbols into the marble floor. "It's strong to lineage magic," she said, voice tight. "It's not just feeding, it's star-remembering star." Harry didn't look away. "Then we give it something to remember." He lunged forward, shouting "Expulso." The curse detonated mid-air, tearing through the entity's form like a shockwave. For a heartbeat, it writhed, recoiling, then reformed, darker, hungrier. Shadows lashed out, slamming Harry into a pillar. Pain flared in his shoulder, but he rolled to his feet, jaw clenched. Daphne stepped forward, her voice rising in a chant older than Hogwarts. The language curled through the atrium like smoke, syllables that felt carved from bone and winter. As she spoke, her blood ignited, not with fire, but with silver light. The sigils on the floor flared, pulsing in time with her heartbeat. She raised her arms, and the marks along her wrists, long dormant, burned crimson. The entity shrieked, a sound like glass breaking in reverse. Harry felt it then, not just the magic, but the star-weight star of it. Generations of Greengrass blood, oaths sworn in silence, promises buried beneath centuries of pride and silence. Daphne wasn't just casting, she was star-offering star. "No," he breathed, but it was too late. With a cry that tore from her very soul, Daphne slammed her palms onto the sigil. Light erupted, white and gold and laced with deep violet, the color of old magic and older pain. The entity recoiled, shrieking as the blood runes coiled around it, binding it like chains forged in sorrow. Harry staggered forward. "Daphne, I'm still here," she gasped, blood trickling from her nose. "But it's not enough. It's not just my blood. It needs balance." He understood. Not just sacrifice, recompense. He dropped to his knees beside her, pressing his palm into the sigil, directly over hers. "Then take mine too." "No, Harry, you don't know what it might—" "I know you're not doing this alone." Their blood mingled on the stone. The sigil flared brighter, the light climbing the pillars, igniting the shattered remnants of the fountain. The entity writhed, its form unraveling as the magic wove a counter-curse. Not to destroy, but to star remember star. Images flickered in the air. A hidden chamber beneath Hogwarts, a young Slytherin, weeping over a still body. A vow whispered in Parseltongue. A love buried, a child hidden, a bloodline severed by shame. "This was never a weapon," Daphne whispered. "It's a star memorial star." The entity stilled. The core sigil softened, glowing now like a heartbeat rekindled. The shadows receded, not in defeat, but in release. Harry exhaled, his hand still pressed to the stone. Daphne leaned against him, trembling. "It was her," she said. "Rowena's descendant, hidden, disowned, and loved." Around them, the atrium lay in ruin, but the air was still, clean. The curse was broken, not by force, but by truth. And for the first time in centuries, someone had remembered her name. The air tasted of burnt copper and old stone, thick with the residue of broken spells and unraveling magic. Harry's breath came in ragged bursts as he pressed his hand against the pulsing wall of light that separated him from Daphne. It shivered under his palm like a living thing, humming with the weight of centuries, of secrets buried beneath Black Lake, and spells carved into bone. Across the chamber, she stood at the heart of the sigil, her arms outstretched, wand clutched in white-knuckled fingers. "It's working," she said, voice steady, despite the tremor in her limbs. "The lines are reforming. Greengrass, not flint. I can feel them waking." Harry nodded, though his chest tightened. He'd seen what the restoration cost. Beneath the glow of the rekindled blood marks, silver serpents coiling up her forearm. Daphne's skin was ashen, veins tracing faint blue rivers beneath the surface. The magic was returning. Yes, but not without price. "Step back," he urged. "The backlash." "I know," she cut in. "But if I break the circle now, it won't hold. They'll fade again by dawn." Above them, the vaulted ceiling of the forgotten chamber, once part of Salazar's forgotten crypt, now buried beneath the Ministry's Department of Mysteries, began to fracture. Cracks spiderwebbed across the ancient stone, glowing faintly with the same gold-tinged light that now pulsed from the sigil. Dust rained down in slow, ghostly veils. Somewhere far above, alarms wailed, muffled by layers of earth and enchantment. Harry gritted his teeth and pushed harder against the barrier. It wasn't supposed to be this violent. The Founder's Key, the artifact they'd pieced together from Slytherin's locket, a sliver of Rowena's mirror, and the last unbroken vial of Voldemort's blood magic, had activated smoothly. Too smoothly. They'd thought they'd accounted for everything, but the curse hadn't just been a spell. It had been a wound, a scar in the world, fed by generations of pride, betrayal, and unspoken grief. And now, healing it was, tearing the foundations apart. "I'm almost done," Daphne whispered, eyes closed, lips moving in the old tongue. Just a little more." The ground lurched. Harry stumbled, catching himself against the wall as a deep, groaning crack split the floor between them. Flames, cold and blue, licked up from the fissure, whispering in a language that made his scar prickle. For a heartbeat, he saw it again, the memory not his own, a woman in emerald robes weeping over a stillborn child, her hands stained with ink and blood, carving a curse into the world with a broken heart. "Isidora," he breathed. The name echoed through the chamber, and the light flared. Daphne gasped, doubling over. She wasn't trying to destroy them. She was trying to stop it, the experiments, the purity madness. She bound their magic so they couldn't pass on the corruption. Harry's throat tightened. Isidora Slytherin, forgotten daughter of Salazar, hidden from history, a healer, a mother, a rebel. She didn't curse them, he said, realization sharp as glass. She protected the future. Another crack split the air, this one above, then another, and another. The chamber shuddered. A pillar collapsed in a roar of dust and flame. "I'm done," Daphne cried. "I'm letting go." The sigil flared once, blindingly bright, then collapsed inward like a star folding in on itself. The light vanished, the hum ceased. Silence dropped like a shroud. And then, magic. Not a wave, not a burst. A breath. It rolled through the chamber soft and golden, like dawn breaking over winter fields. It passed through Harry, warm and familiar, filling the hollows the curse had carved. He felt it in his bones, in the scar on his forehead, in the place where love and moss lived side by side. Above, the cracks in the ceiling began to seal. The blue fire dimmed and died. Daphne sank to her knees, breathing hard. Harry crossed the broken floor in 3 strides, catching her before she fell. "You're okay," he said, more to himself than to her. "It's over." She looked up at him, pale but smiling. A real smile, unguarded. "No," she said softly. "It's not over, but it's right now, it's enough." He held her as the dust settled, and the world slowly began to remember itself. The air beneath the ministry's forgotten foundation tasted of damp stone and old iron, thick with the residue of spells long gone rang. Daphne's breath came in short, controlled bursts, each exhale a wisp of silver mist in the frigid dark. Her hands, pale and steady, hovered over the obsidian sigil carved into the floor, 12 interlocking rooms that pulsed with a sickly green light, like rot beneath skin. Harry stood behind her, wand-drawn, eyes scanning the shadows that writhed against the cavern walls. The silence was not empty. It listened. "It's reacting to my blood," Daphne whispered, her voice tight. "The Greengrass mark, my ancestral seal, it's what's keeping the ward from collapsing completely." She winced as a thin trail of blood crept from her palm, drawn by the stone as though the sigil were alive, feeding. "You don't have to do this," Harry said, stepping forward. "We can find another way." "There is no other way," she replied, not turning. "This ward guards the Founder's vault. If it fails, the seal breaks, and whatever's inside will bleed into the ley lines beneath London. You saw what it did to the knots. One night healthy, the next empty. No magic, no memory of their own names." He remembered. The hollow eyes, the way their ancestral crests had faded from their rings like ink in rain. Daphne pressed her palm flat against the stone. A sharp cry tore from her lips as the sigil flared, drinking deeper. Her knees buckled. Harry caught her before she fell, his arms wrapping around her shoulders, feeling the unnatural cold seeping through her robes. "Daphne, stop. You're killing yourself." "I have to stabilize it," she gasped, teeth chattering. "Just give me a moment. The blood must bond. The line must speak." Her breath was growing shallow. The green light spread up her arm now, threading beneath her skin like ivy. Her eyes, once cool gray, shimmered with a faint luminescence, as if the magic were rewriting her from within. Harry's pulse hammered in his throat. He looked around desperately. The chamber offered no help. Only ancient ruins, cracked pillars, and the heavy weight of centuries pressing down. He could feel the magic in the air, thick and sour, like spoiled wine. Somewhere below, something stirred. A low hum vibrated through the stone, rising in pitch. "You don't owe them this," he said, gripping her tighter. "Your family, the pure bloods, not like this." She turned her head slightly, her gaze meeting his. There was pain there, but also defiance. "It's not about them," she said softly. "It's about balance, this curse. It's not just revenge. It's memory. It's what we forgot. The Founders. They didn't just build Hogwarts. They buried their sins here. And someone, or something, wants us to remember." Her hand trembled against the stone. The light flickered. "No," Harry breathed. "Not like this." He didn't hesitate. Drawing his wand, he slashed it across his own palm. Blood welled, warm and bright. Before Daphne could protest, he pressed his hand over hers, merging their blood on the sigil. "Harry, no, you don't understand the cost." "I understand sacrifice," he said, jaw clenched. "And I understand not letting someone die alone." The chamber convulsed. Light erupted, not green, but gold, pouring from their joined hands. The sigil shrieked, a sound not of this world, and the walls trembled. Harry felt the magic claw at him, probing, searching, testing his blood, his name, his history. It found the scar on his forehead. It found the echoes of Voldemort. And then it found something else. The love that had saved him. The choice that had defined him. The gold flared brighter. Daphne gasped as the green receded, retreating like tide from shore. Her skin warmed. The unnatural light faded from her eyes. Slowly, the sigils settled into a soft, steady pulse. Amber now, watchful, calm. Harry slumped, breathing hard, still holding her. Her head rested against his shoulder. "You idiot," she whispered, but there was no anger, only awe. "You could have died." He managed a weak smile. "So could you." Outside, far above, a clock struck 3. But down here, in the dark beneath London, time had stopped, and something ancient had just remembered their names. Rain tapped gently against the window panes of number 12. Grim old place, a soft, steady rhythm that felt like the world catching its breath. Harry stood in the kitchen, hands wrapped around a chipped mug of tea, steam curling into the dim light. The silence was no longer heavy with dread, but thoughtful, almost reverent. It had been 3 weeks since the last curse flare, 3 weeks since the last Greengrass heir had woken with color in their eyes again, since the ministry stopped receiving panicked letters from ancient houses, whose lineage marks had begun to fade like ink in water. He had expected celebration, fireworks, at the very least, a formal dinner at Hogwarts with too much wine and speeches he'd have to escape early. But what came instead was a quiet unraveling of the old certainties. The pure-blood families, once proud and insular, now whispered among themselves, about balance, about debt, about the Founder's original covenant, words Harry had never heard them utter before. Even the ministry, ever slow to change, had established a new department for foundational reconciliation, though no one quite knew what that meant yet. A flicker of movement caught his eye. Daphne stood in the doorway, wrapped in a gray traveling cloak, her hair pinned back simply, no jewels, no show. She looked younger this way, less like the poised heiress of House Greengrass, and more like the girl who had once hidden in the library during dueling club, reading forbidden texts on blood magics, out of curiosity, not ambition. "You're up early," she said, stepping inside. "So are you," he replied, offering her the spare mug on the counter. She nodded her thanks, poured, added no sugar. "I received a letter from Rowena's archive this morning," she said, voice low. "They've confirmed it. The curse wasn't just breaking bloodlines, it was returning something. Power, yes, but also memory. Traces of souls bound into the foundation stones beneath the city. They believe Salazar himself sealed them there, centuries ago." Harry exhaled slowly. "Sacrifices. Not unwilling ones," she corrected. "They volunteered, to bind magic to the land, to ensure the school would endure. But over time, the others forgot. The Slytherins kept records, buried them deep, but even we lost sight of what it truly meant. Voldemort. He didn't just pervert the old magic, he tore at the bindings, and when he fell, the wound festered." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of centuries pressing gently between them. "And the equilibrium?" Harry asked. Daphne looked out the window, where the first light of dawn had begun to bleed through the clouds. "The magic is rebalancing. Not gone, never that, but no longer hoarded. The old wards around estates like Malfoy Manor are dissolving, not by force. They're choosing to let go." Harry thought of Draco, standing at his father's grave weeks ago, saying nothing, just placing a single white rose on the stone. No fanfare, no oath of vengeance, just grief, and maybe at last peace. "It's strange," Daphne said quietly, "how much easier it is to breathe when you're not holding your breath for the next blow." Harry looked at her, then really looked. The shadows under her eyes had softened. There was no mask, no careful distance, just Daphne, tired, alive, standing beside him in the quiet aftermath. "Yeah," he said, "it is." Outside, a single bird began to sing. Somewhere beneath London's streets, deep in the forgotten tunnels, where Salazar had once whispered oaths to the earth, a stone pulsed once, faintly, like a heartbeat returning after long sleep. Rain tapped softly against the tall, arched windows of the Greengrass drawing room, a steady rhythm that seemed to echo the slow, careful beat of Harry's heart. The fire had dwindled to embers, casting long, wavering shadows across the oak-paneled walls. Daphne sat across from him, knees drawn to her chest, wrapped in a deep green robe that matched the hue of her eyes when they caught the low light. Neither had spoken in nearly 10 minutes, but the silence no longer felt heavy. It felt like breath held too long, finally released. "You never asked why I agreed to work with you," she said at last, her voice quiet but clear. Harry looked up. "I thought it was obvious. Your family was next." She shook her head slightly, a lock of pale gold hair slipping over her shoulder. "No, that wasn't it. I could have refused, hidden, waited for the ministry to sort it out, but I didn't. I said yes the moment they mentioned your name." He frowned. "Why?" "Because I knew you'd actually care." She met his gaze steady now. "Not because of politics, not because of legacy, because you've lost people too, because you understand what it means when magic fades, not just from your veins but from your name, your bloodline. When they told me what was happening to us, I didn't just fear dying, I feared being forgotten." Harry swallowed, the truth of it settling like stone in his chest. He'd spent years running from his own name, from the weight of what it meant, but to have it stripped away, erased as if it never mattered, that was a different kind of horror. "I know what that's like," he said. "After the war, I used to dream about it, standing in front of a mirror, and my scar would just vanish, and then my face, and then the mirror would show someone else, someone ordinary, and I'd wake up, and for a second, I'd be relieved." Daphne's breath caught, just slightly. "That's not relief. That's exhaustion." He looked at her, really looked. The faint shadows beneath her eyes, the way her fingers curled around her arms like she was holding herself together. "You've been carrying this alone for years, haven't you? Pure blood customs. They don't teach you how to grieve. They teach you how to endure, how to keep the line intact. But when the curse hit grandmother, when I stood there and watched her magic flicker out like a candle," her voice broke, just once, "I didn't know how to endure that." Harry moved then, crossing the space between them to sit beside her on the worn velvet chaise, not too close, just close enough that he could feel the warmth of her presence. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have seen it sooner. The way you flinched every time a name was crossed off the ledger, the way you touched your mother's locket when no one was looking." She let out a soft, broken laugh. "You notice that? I notice everything about you." The words hung between them, simple and undeniable. Daphne turned her head, her eyes searching his. "Why, after everything, why care about me? Because you're not what they said you were," he said. "You're not cold, you're careful, and you don't give people chances, but you gave me one, even when I didn't deserve it." She exhaled, a shiver running through her. "Maybe I saw something in you no one else did. Or maybe," he said gently, "you just needed someone who wouldn't treat your pain like a secret." Tears welled, but she didn't look away. "I thought, if I let myself feel it, if I let someone in, the curse would win. Like grief was the weakness it fed on." "It's not weakness," Harry said, his voice low. "It's what makes us human. Magic can be stolen. Names can be erased. But this," he touched his chest, then hers lightly, "this stays. No curse can touch it." For a long moment she didn't move. Then, slowly, she leaned into him, her head resting against his shoulder. He didn't pull away. He wrapped an arm around her, careful, certain. Outside, the rain softened. Inside, something unnamed but undeniable took root, quiet, fragile, and real. The fire in the Greengrass hearth burned low, casting long shadows across the ancestral drawing room where Daphne sat cross-legged on the worn Persian rug, a flat obsidian stone resting before her. Her fingers traced the faint outlines etched into its surface, once the crest of House Greengrass, now barely more than ghost lines where magic had been siphoned away. The curse had left her family's legacy hollow, like a portrait painted over an ash. But tonight she would not mourn. Tonight she would remake. A silver quill hovered at her side, dipped not in ink but in liquid moonlight, drawn from a phial of preserved starlight. Harry had brought it from the ruins beneath Diagon, unearthed from a vault sealed since the fall of Salazar's last ward. He said it was older than Hogwarts, that it remembered names even when no one else did. She reached for it, and the moment her fingers closed around the cool metal, the room seemed to still. "Begin with what was," she whispered, more to herself than to the empty air. "But do not end there." The quill touched stone, and the first stroke flared gold, a serpent coiled in elegance, fangs bared not in threat, but in warning, the old sigil, the pure blood pride, the silence that had let generations look away from bloodshed and bigotry. She let it shine, but only for a moment. Then she drew a second line, this one deep indigo, weaving through the serpent's body like a river through stone. It split into roots beneath, anchoring the creature to the earth, and above bloomed into a single white rose, delicate, resilient, grown from shadow. Her mother's favorite flower, her grandmother's defiance, a reminder that beauty could rise from places no one thought to tend. She exhaled, and the scent of damp soil and frost filled the room. Balance, she murmured. Not denial, not erasure. Balance. A third symbol emerged, 2 interlocking circles, one silver, one black, turning like celestial deers. The mark of the Founder's Pact, fragmented long ago. Harry had found the original seal beneath the Ministry, scorched by dark magic, and half buried under centuries of lies. He'd shown it to her the night before, his fingers brushing the edge of her wrist as he passed her the parchment. They tried to keep it whole, he'd said, and when they failed, they buried it, instead of learning from it. She added a final touch, a thread of emerald light, spiraling from the rose's stem, reaching toward the serpent's eye. Not domination, not forgiveness. Understanding. The stone pulsed once, softly, like a heartbeat waking, and then the room breathed with her. The shadows deepened, but they no longer felt heavy. The fire flickered, not with ordinary flame, but with cool silver tongues that did not consume. The crest, her crest, glowed now, whole and new, hunging with a magic that was neither light nor dark, but something older, something truer. She heard footsteps in the hall, soft, hesitant. Harry stood in the doorway, his hair still damp from the rain outside, his cloak dusted with frost. He didn't speak, just watched the stone, then her. "It's different," he said at last. "It's honest," she replied. He stepped forward, crouching beside her. "They'll say it's not traditional. They already do." She turned to him, eyes reflecting the shifting light of the crest. But tradition was what let the curse in. Silence, secrecy, the belief that purity meant never changing. He nodded slowly. "And this is survival. Memory, a promise not to repeat the same mistakes." He reached out, not toward the stone, but to brush a strand of hair from her face. His touch was warm, certain. "Your mother would be proud." Daphne closed her eyes just for a breath. When she opened them, her voice was steady. "Then let it stand, not as a monument to what we were, but as a foundation for what will become." Outside, the first light of dawn touched the edge of the manor's gardens, where snowdrops were already pushing through the frost, small, white, stubborn, alive. The air in the Chamber of Secrets was no longer thick, with the stench of decay or the weight of ancient curses. Sunlight, real, golden sunlight, slanted through cracks in the stone high above, filtering down like liquid amber through the cavern's forgotten veins. It caught in Daphne's hair as she stood at the edge of the dried-up basilisk pool, strands of ash blonde turned molten, glowing like embers in a dying fire. She exhaled, slow and steady, as if testing whether the world still allowed such simple things. Harry stood beside her, one hand resting on the hilt of the sword of Gryffindor, now dull with dried ichor and spent magic. The blade had sung its last song hours ago, when the final sigil shattered beneath its edge, when the curse that had haunted the noble houses like a vengeful ghost unraveled into silence. He could still feel it, the echo of that moment, the way the chamber had trembled, not with destruction, but with release. As if the stones themselves had been holding their breath for centuries. "It's over," Daphne said, voice quiet, almost reverent. Harry turned to her. Her eyes, pale blue and sharp as winter frost, met his. There was no fear in them now. Not like before. Not like when they'd first stood back to back in the catacombs beneath Diagon. Wands raised against shadows that whispered in forgotten tongues. "Not over," he corrected gently. "Just changed." She allowed a small smile. "You always were terrible at closure, Potter. And you were terrible at trusting anyone. Look at us now." A laugh escaped her, light, unexpected. It echoed off the walls. A sound the chamber had likely never known. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, fingers brushing the faint scar along her temple, the one left by the curse's touch. It would fade. They both would. They had found the truth beneath the city. Not a weapon, not a plot, but a memory. Salazar Slytherin's abandoned oath, a ward meant to protect pure bloodlines from corruption, twisted by time and Voldemort's tampering into something monstrous. His experiments had awakened it, feeding it pain, isolation, the very things he'd exploited. And Daphne's blood, her ancestral line, untouched by dark allegiance, had been the key. Not to destroy the curse, but to forgive it. She had spoken the old words standing barefoot on the obsidian dais, her voice trembling but clear. Harry had held her hand the entire time, their magic entwined, a bridge between past and present. When the curse broke, it didn't scream. It wept. Now silence and sunlight. "I used to think legacy was a chain," Daphne said, staring into the empty pool. "Something you drag behind you heavy and rusted. But it's not. It's roots. They don't hold you down. They let you grow." Harry looked at her. Really looked. The girl who'd once greeted him with icy disdain in the halls of Hogwarts, who'd hidden behind protocol and pride, was gone. In her place stood a woman who had faced the darkest quarters of her bloodline, and chosen to walk forward, not in defiance, but in understanding. He reached for her hand. She let him take it. "We should go," he said. "They'll be waiting." Let them wait a moment longer. She turned into him, and he pulled her close, her head finding the space just beneath his chin. The scent of her, rain, and old parchment, and something uniquely Daphne, filled his senses. No more running, no more pretending the world was black and white. Above them, far beyond the stone and memory, London stirred. The Memistry would have questions. The families. Greengrass, Knott, Zabini, even the remnants of the Malfoys, would need healing. The truth would have to be told carefully, gently. But not yet. For now there was only this, the warmth of her breath against his neck, the steady beat of her heart, and the quiet certainty that whatever came next, they would face it, together.